Our new partner who I'm really, really excited to announce we are working with. Super, super stoked. Thank you, Angie Huberman, for this connect. It's incredible. AG1 Athletic Greens. I've been using them for a while. I have them every morning on an empty stomach. Basically, take one scoop and you put it into a cup or glass or mug of 8 ounces of cold water. And this is all your greens for the day. You're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens. Every day I take this. It's so good for my digestion, my energy. It's simple. It's easy. I don't like taking a lot of vitamins. This has been really, really helpful for me. I've had a lot of stomach issues my whole life, and ever since I've been gluten-free and taking the AG1s, it's really helped me in my stomach in the mornings. I love it, and I'm so psyched that they're part of the One Life One Chance podcast. I'm sure a lot of people don't like eating greens, let alone drinking your greens, but I can tell you straight up, it's got a mild tropical taste, and the taste is actually really refreshing, and I really look forward to it each morning. Don't think it's just going to be just straight bland. It tastes really, really good, and it's good for you, so remember that. This one blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging. It's incredible, just one scoop, especially for musicians who are vegans or just musicians in general who want to get those daily greens. You can get the packets. It's incredible. I just gave some to my friend Derek from Sepultura. He traveled the whole entire world this summer, and he had those every single day. He said it saved him. I bring AG1s with me when I travel. It helps me stay healthy. You know the deal. If you're on tour and you are a picky eater, but you need to have your greens, sometimes catering doesn't have greens. Sometimes you miss the catering. Sometimes you miss the backstage food. Sometimes it's too late after the show to go get food that you like. So if you just have a scoop of AG1s in your hotel room before you go to bed, or you're in the hotel room at night and you're starving and you want something healthy, boom, life changer. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with some convenient daily nutrition. That's all you need, one scoop in a cup every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. This is it. I'm super psyched. And to make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/OLLC. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/OLLC to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. This is incredible. I love it. It's just basic greens. For me personally, this has changed my life tremendously. I'm not a junk food vegan. I don't eat a lot of fake meats, so I'm strictly greens. And this has been a wonderful, wonderful new addition to my life. So once again, visit athleticgreens.com/OLLC. and get 1 free year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. athleticgreens.com/OLOC. Yo, Liquid Death, thank you so much for hydrating all my guests, taking care of me and my family and my friends. Love your water, love your brand, love what you stand for, love what you give back to the community. If you want to learn more about Liquid Death and how it started, listen to episode 115 with the co-founder, owner, and creator of Liquid Death, Mike Cesario. Just a punk rock skateboarding kid from Delaware with a dream. It's an incredible story, incredible journey. They have now blessed me with my own code. So if you go liquiddeath.com/Toby, you get free shipping on any items you order from liquiddeath.com. Thank you so much, Liquid Death. Death to plastic, murder your thirst. Stay hydrated. You know H2O saves lives. This is my first time doing a podcast on Saturday. Welcome to the One Life One Chance podcast. I'm your host, Toby Morse. Today I have a very, very special host. Very special host today, Mr. Andrew Huberman. Do I have to call you doctor if you're not my guest? Or you're just my friend?
No, we're friends. Just call me Andrew.
Okay. But Dr. Andrew Huberman's here. It's just so official. And then in front of me I have Michael Blabac. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah,
and you told me so much about you're a fucking legend in the skateboard world. So I'm honored to have you in my kitchen. This worked out perfect.
I'm honored to be in your kitchen.
Yeah. So how you guys doing?
Today's great. We started the day with a workout.
Oh, you did too? You both
Yes.
worked out? Okay.
Yeah.
What kind of workout?
I did legs cardio. He went to the gym.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah,
You went to the gym at your place, or you go off?
On Saturdays, I go use a commercial gym, but in the middle of the week, I was training at my place. But yeah, we can get into how Mike got into working out because it was not part of his world, but it is now.
It certainly was not.
Was skateboarding just your workout of exercise and?
Just skateboarding, period. Just my life of just traveling and drinking and hanging out and doing anything but working out, pretty much.
Carrying camera bags. Those bags are no joke.
That's legit too.
Yeah.
Every photographer that I know, they're hunched over like a Wolverine, you know, and their back just takes it. But yeah, we'll get around to Mike's journey into fitness.
So Steubenville, Ohio.
Yeah, wow. Yes. Born in Steubenville,
Ohio. I never heard
Ohio.
of that place before.
Most people haven't.
Is it near Cleveland?
No, it's in the Ohio Valley where West Virginia and Pennsylvania kind of meet up.
And how was it growing up out there?
It sucked. Okay. Well, I was born in Steubenville, raised in a little town called Richmond. I have no idea how many people are there, but there's essentially no one there. I mean, I talked to cows in my backyard and like went to the woods with like a shotgun by myself in the middle of the, you know, like I was just as rural as can be, like nothing around there. It was insane.
Right. You have siblings too?
No, only child.
Only child.
Yeah.
Growing up into wow.
Yeah.
So what you do for fun? Like you just go in the woods?
Literally that. Like I would chew tobacco and have a shotgun, and I was a hick. Like just went in the, you know, it was insane.
Wait, but get this.
Wow.
But get this. Mike is saying he chewed tobacco and shoot a shotgun. But at what age did you start chewing tobacco?
Like 6 or 7.
Holy that's gnarly.
And it is gnarly. It was I didn't think anything of it.
It was just normal.
Well, I hung out with like older kids.
Okay.
And so they thought it was funny, you know, like, gave me like skull packets and
skull bandits.
Yeah, exactly.
Some kids got pacifiers. Mike got a skull packet.
Yeah.
It was like putting your
Parents don't do this, by the way. We're laughing, but it's just because it's so outrageously backward from what's healthy.
Especially at that age, yeah.
Yeah, in hindsight, it's insane. I mean, now that I have kids, it's completely crazy.
So you were just out there. Your parents weren't really strict at all?
No, they would buy me skull bandits. Like it was like, yeah.
How long did you do that for?
Probably till I was like 9 or so.
Did you graduate to smoking after that and stuff like that?
No, I moved. Okay. I graduated to skateboarding. When my parents moved to Michigan, I think I was like 10 or 11, I started skating.
Okay.
And then that's
changed
all
everything.
I did. Yeah. Skating and photography. That's it.
Tell us what your birthday gift was when you were 8 years old.
I mean, my parents, you know, we lived in rural Ohio. So it was like my parents bought me an AK-47 when I was like a kid.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So, you know, like that was my reality.
You seem like not that type of person at all.
I'm absolutely not that type
of
person.
It's crazy. So skateboarding changed. That probably opened your mind in so many ways and just everything, avenues, all that.
Yeah, I mean, especially once I moved to San Francisco, my mind was blown.
Yeah.
You know, but like even skateboarding in general, like my whole world was, you know, Thrasher and Trans World as a kid, like just pouring through the magazines. And
it was just a kid you met when you moved to Michigan. That was it.
Yeah, I met a kid skateboarding, and at the time I was into BMX. And then I just saw skateboarding and actually saw real skateboarding, and just my mind was blown. Like everything about it was amazing. Just the artwork on grip tape and just the skate, like how creative it was, how creative the photography was. It was mind blowing.
What was your first setup? Do you remember?
I was a Neil Blender.
Nice, I had Neil Blender
GNS
as well.
with the guy, the coffee.
Yeah, I had that one too, actually. Yeah.
Indies.
He's underrated. Nobody talks about Neil Blender that much.
He's amazing.
He had a good shape of his board too.
Yeah.
Yeah, he has this kind of a Gons-like quality to him.
Yes.
Like super creative and unusual.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah. Do you know Neil?
I don't. No.
Me either. He still skates too, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
he was an artist.
Grant Britton's friends with him, and so you know I've always wanted to meet him because in the last probably decade, I'm like, you know, I've worked for Girl for a number of year, and then I was at Mad Circle, and then the last 20 going on 24 years, I've worked for DC Shoes, and so I've been with like a small group of people, but yet been in this family of skateboarders.
Yeah.
And so like about a decade ago, I'm like, man, I really need to meet more of these people. So like
we got to come out from behind the camera to do that.
I do. Yeah. And so, it's amazing to meet, guys like Gab and Lance and just dudes that I've, looked up to ever since I was a kid, and it's crazy to reach out to them now. And, we know who one another is from our, my tenure in skateboarding, and it's such an amazing thing.
So did you graduate from high school in Michigan?
I did. Yeah.
And what were your goals when you were getting out of school?
I wanted to be a photographer.
Okay.
I didn't know how I was going to do that. I worked at Ritz Camera when I was like 15 until I was 19 when I moved to San Francisco. I also assisted a guy that shot my portraits for high school.
Okay.
He shot weddings and horse shit like that. And so it was crazy. I would shoot the wedding and then go to the church and then process the film in the sink at the church and mount the slides, and we'd have a slideshow. at the reception. It blew people's minds.
Wow.
Which is crazy because how photography is now is just, I mean, it's everything's instantaneous. So it's like, it's an amazing thing.
Did you grow up religious?
No.
Okay.
No. I mean, I was baptized Catholic. Family was Catholic, but certainly wasn't religious.
What about music? I never asked you this. Were you into hip hop, punk?
Hip hop.
Hip hop first.
Yeah. I mean, listened to tons of punk because of skateboard videos, but mostly grew up listening to like De La Soul and Tribe and just tons of hip hop.
The best shit.
Yeah.
All those original skate videos were all hardcore soundtracks. That's how I got to find most of my skate rock and stuff.
Yeah.
Then it changed to hip hop the past 20 years, 15, 20 years, right? Yeah. It was cool to see that change, like having that in there.
Yeah.
Oh, somebody's here. So you're in Michigan, and now what are you doing? You graduated, now you're trying to take photography courses? You going to college and stuff, or no?
I went to college, or tried to go to college. I went to Lansing Community College.
Max walked in the room.
Yeah. Got a dap. Went to Lansing Community College because my goal was to go to Brooks Institute of Photography because that was like the pinnacle of photo schools in America. And I went to LCC, Lansing Community College, and it sucked. I mean, they were like tried to, teach me things that I already knew.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, hey, like, I mean, I'm sure I was a bit of a dick because I was a kid, but I was like, I already know all this stuff, and I want to test past it or have the opportunity to, and they, simply weren't having it. So I got my money back and took that money and moved to San Francisco to skate for the summer.
How old were you then?
I was 19.
How'd you get out there?
I drove in my red Pontiac Sunbird convertible. Yeah.
By yourself?
With a friend from Michigan, just straight through.
That's
like
cool.
We took turns like sleeping.
Did they stay?
I think so. Yeah. I quickly, when I moved to the city, I used to skate EMB by myself, and I kind of met all the guys in the city pretty quickly. Carl Watson was one of the first dudes that came up to me and was just like, "Hey, what's your deal? Like, I see you here all the time." And I was like, "I don't know. I'm from Michigan. Like, I just skate here all the time."
Carl's the greeting committee. It was him, Nick Lockman, and Sam Smythe. The guys, I think of them as littler, even though now a lot of them are taller than I am. Yeah. Because they were little back then, and they were like the greeting committee, and they were the friendly greeting committee.
That's cool.
And they kind of usher you through, and they'd tell you like, "Hey, like, stay away from him. Like, he'll steal your stuff." Like, you know, and they were great. But now Carl's still in it. Carl's writing kids books. He works for Adidas. He's got a skateboard company.
Yeah.
He's got some kids who also skateboard.
Yes.
So it was like a warm welcome. It was like, here's a new kid.
It was. But Embarcadero was a gnarly place. So I wasn't sure how warm the welcome actually was.
Yeah.
Turns out it was. But, I was cautiously optimistic of how warm it was. I had my wits about me, and I just saw what was going on at EMB. But then eventually met everyone in the city. And, I quickly kind of was in the fold of skateboarding. I started working for Mad Circle very early on, and it was an amazing thing. So I just kind of started living with Justin Gerard and helped him with Mad Circle, with like helping him with graphics and the ads and just kind of anything that he needed assistance with. We worked on it together. So
that's awesome. And then as far as photography is concerned, what was your inspiration for that? Why did you want to start taking photos? And we like kind of self-taught because there wasn't no YouTube videos back then teaching.
There was none of that. No. Yeah. I don't know. It's weird. I was always into cameras ever since I was a kid. Like when I was in kindergarten, I like took my parents' 110 camera and I went on a field trip and shot just 3 cartridges of 110 film of just nothing, and was fascinated by the fact that this medium of having a camera and getting photographs back. And I started getting into it when I was very young. And I had a darkroom when I was like 10 or 11.
Jeez.
Right after we moved to Michigan. And, it's just like, I'd read tons of books about it, read magazines. Like, I just was fascinated by it.
Awesome.
But then when I saw skateboarding, it got me even more sparked on photography. Because I was like, whoa, like, I've never seen anything like this. Yeah. Like Spike Jonze photos and Grant Britton photos of skating where the shutter's dragged and there's flashes in the frame, and it was nothing like the Ansel Adams books I was reading. I was like, this is insane. Like, it's so much, like, not cooler, but it's like, it's very creative. Like, it just got me so much more stoked on photography. I kept them separate though for so long. Like I would skate with my friends, and then I'd go out at night and shoot photos of like, I don't know, dumb shit like Barnes or whatever and process film and learn how to print. And then I didn't really combine the two. I didn't combine the two until truly when I lived in San Francisco.
I love the Thrasher mags when they showed you like the different tricks you could do, like all the different
like a
stages.
sequence.
Yeah, the sequence shots. There's no videos back then, so you look at Thrasher for all that stuff.
Oh yeah, I mean those were
photos, man.
Yeah, those were hectic to shoot because film is expensive, and so like someone had to land something in a certain amount of time, or else I'm like, dude, I'm out of film. Like so.
Right, if you shoot 50 sequences, you're like,
yeah.
So is that why? Did you choose to take photos of people that you knew could like land bullets most of the time? Like,
some people would get salty if you wouldn't shoot a sequence of them.
Really?
Yeah, they're like, man, like I'm gonna do this, and I'm like, nope, like, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Answer me this. I guess this would be the. I want to keep this relatively PG-13. I guess this would be the fake orgasm of photography. Did you ever say I'm shooting the sequence, but you actually weren't wasting film because you knew they wouldn't make it?
No,
Ooh,
I never. No, I never did that.
Okay.
I did.
Mike never faked it.
I did. I did, although blow it and like run out of film. Or somehow fucked it up.
Yeah.
And then like if Danny or someone was like, hey, like, did you get it? And I'm like, yeah, I got it, but I think you could do a little bit better. And like, and fortunately he always did. Cause I always wanted to have confidence in what I was doing. But yeah, I kind of blew it a couple times with sequences, but fortunately, like I always pulled it off.
Well, when you're taking photos of Danny Way in the 90s, chances are whatever he's doing, you want to be capturing that.
Yes. Although he's such a gnarly human being that he would skate for like 6 or 7 hours straight. Like I would be sore shooting photos of him, just standing there and running around on the ramp. And when I started to run out of film with him, he'd be like, dude, you should always have like 1,000 rolls of film. And I'm like,
that sounds like Danny.
Yeah.
That's a compliment, Danny, by the way.
And I'm like, that's like $6,000. He's like, so? And he's like, we have a fridge, put it all in the fridge. It's fine. And I'm just like, dude, like, so I always had like a lot of film. This was when I worked for DC and they were buying my film. And so I was like, I theoretically could buy 1,000 rolls of film, although I didn't want to stand there and shoot 1,000 rolls of film because it's gnarly. But yeah, we went through a lot of film at times.
Do you remember your first like photo in the magazine?
Yeah, it was of Edward De Vera doing a switch frontside 5.0 at the Federal Building in San Francisco in 94.
Wow.
Yeah.
So were you taking photos and submitting them? Is that how that happens?
So when I was a kid, when I was in 8th grade, I wrote Grant Britton a letter.
Okay.
And I was like, hey, dude, like, here's some photos I took. Like, how do I take photos?
It's cool.
And he just kind of wrote me back and was like, your horizon line was off. He tells everyone that. And, we had a bit of correspondence. I think I wrote him like maybe 2 or 3 times from middle school, through when I graduated high school.
It's cool.
And then when I got to San Francisco, I called him. I, called Transworld.
Called him, yeah.
It's like no cell phones. Like I called Transworld. I called the office and was just like asked for Grant Britton. I called the receptionist and I was like, hey, I'm the dude that like, I'm from Michigan. Like I wrote you a letter. He's like, oh yeah, I know who you are. And he's like, what are you doing in San Francisco? And I'm like, I pretty much moved here. And he's like, well, what are you doing? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm friends with like Mike Carroll and Javante and Chico. And he's like, I'll send you film. And I was like, whoa, really? And sent me a box of film. My mind was blown.
That's incredible.
Oh, it was the coolest thing ever. Like, Sent him some photos and he called me and he was like, hey, like called my house. And I remember my roommate was like, Grant Britton's on the phone. My mind was blown. Like, I was like, what? Are you serious? Like, are you messing with me? And he told me, he's like, hey, your photos are a little out of focus. Like, you should probably get a new lens. And so I got
how honest he was with you, man, from the jump.
Oh, no, he's the best. And so it's funny because I got a new lens because I had an off-brand, like a Sigma lens at the time. I bought a Nikon one. And he sent him photos and he's like, dude, your photos are still out of focus. You need to get your eyes checked. And I went and got my eyes checked.
No
and,
way, man.
That's why I have glasses.
Wow.
Photographer with some visual issues, it turns out.
I mean, they look sharp to me, but I couldn't see because they were, my vision was
that guy's
blurred.
amazing, man. Wow.
He's the best. Yeah, he's
just
the
like
best.
writing you a letter back to some random kid hitting him up, for advice.
Yeah. I mean, it's a trip because we're very good friends now.
Yeah,
we're neighbors.
Sure.
I live like a mile away from him. And it's a trip that, someone that I used to write a letter to when I was in Lansing, Michigan as a kid in 8th grade, like 13 years old, I'd writing him letters and now we're we're neighbors and really good friends.
It's amazing.
It's
man.
all a trip. Yeah.
And how good was your skating skills back then?
Good. I mean, like I think that's maybe. I mean, I don't know. I'm a skater, so I feel like a dumbass even saying good. But yeah, I could skate. I mean, that's how I got to become friends with a lot of the pros.
Yeah. Did you want to go pro?
I kind of. I don't know. No, I never. Especially not when I moved to the city and I saw saw Carl and Scott Johnston and Javante and all those dudes. I'm like, all right, I'm good. Like,
But you could lip side brown marble benches.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I could skate around the city.
You're more of a street skater than ramp skater?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, transitionally challenged.
Okay.
I never had ramps like growing up in Michigan. None of my friends had any, so I only
an
on the streets.
AK-47, but no transition.
Chewing tobacco.
Couldn't find
photos.
it. Just wasn't accessible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Chewing tobacco, taking photos.
Well, when I was taking photos and skating, I put the guns and the tobacco down. Wow. And yeah.
It's so crazy. It's like that's just like your normal, like living like that. When you're growing up in that area, you know.
Yeah, I mean that's why the first time Mike told me that, like, oh yeah, my 8th birthday, I got a can of dip and an AK-47. I was like, whoa, And actually, there's a kind of famous photo that Mike has in his book of his parents standing in a field wearing, I think your mom's wearing a Mad Circle shirt.
Yes.
And she's holding a machine gun or a shotgun.
Wow.
My parents both actually have guns. I moved to San Francisco and, started working for Mad Circle, like started to see like my eyes were open to so many more things than growing up in the Midwest. And it was one of the first times that I went back to Michigan to visit them.
Yeah.
And I got to my parents' house and my dad's out back like shooting, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, it was just it was so weird to me, even though that's how I grew up. I mean, one of the only things I ever did with my father was going to the gun range and like reloading ammo and like just doing all those things as a kid. That's all I did. And he's like, oh, I'm testing out a new laser sight like on my Uzi, and I'm just like, oh my god, like what? Like, this is insane.
Was he a prepper? Was he preparing for the apocalypse?
I think that he was a pre-prepper. I think it was before there were preppers, but yeah, they just, and he wasn't, and like how things are now, he wasn't like a militia or like wasn't like he just truly liked guns and like was in the military and just we'd go to the gun range, and that's pretty much how it was. So it was normal for me growing up, but even the short time that I was in San Francisco and I went back, I was like, well, this is insane. Like, this is a trip, my mom, like, I'm like, hey mom, will you grab a gun? And I just shot a portrait of him out in front of their house. Like, and it's such the one Andrew.
Because you moved to such a big multicultural city. It's like an amazing city, San Francisco.
Oh, it was amazing. Like, I loved it. I as soon as I drove over the Bay Bridge coming into the city from Michigan, I knew I wasn't going to leave. Because Lansing, Michigan, I mean,
it's just night and day, man.
It was night and day. I knew even growing up that I was not meant to stay there. And when I went there to skateboard, for the summer, I was like, I'm for sure not leaving. And like, I was in heaven.
Your parents were supportive of that? You going out there and I'm gonna take photos. I'm gonna skate. I'm gonna figure it out.
I mean, as you may have gathered, being able to grab a shotgun and a quad I was pretty feral as a kid growing up, so they were like, sure, you want to go to San Francisco, whatever, like, and I'm sure my parents loved me. Like, they were just like, do whatever you want, but it was kind of like they understood.
Yeah. It's a big deal, man, going out there and making that move, not really knowing anybody,
Well, yeah, and Embarcadero in the early 90s was, late 80s, early 90s was like a little city run by kids.
What's that area? Like, break that down. I heard
Justin
that name.
Herman Plaza, right at the end of Market, where Market hits the bay.
Okay.
They've taken out a bunch of the blocks and the gaps and things that made it famous, but there's a bunch of little spots there that are iconic now. Actually, Mike, you should probably talk about Hubba's hideout, and then and probably the picks and the famous pick.
Yes.
Well, I can call it famous because I didn't take it, but it is famous. But there were a bunch of little spots down at the end there. It's a little bit like a Washington Square Park, or now Tompkins Square Park, or in Philly Love Park. There are these spots where basically either the cops don't care or there's so many kids there so often they just give up. They're just like, we give up.
Okay.
Yeah, EMB was kind of like that. It was at the end of Market Street, and I lived in Western Addition, so I'd bomb like either Hayes or Haight skate down Market, hit all the spots like Brown Marble Benches, Pine Street Bump, like kind of cruise down and end up in Embarcadero, and there's the end of Market Street, and just skate there all the time. And to Andrew's point, just people, it was like live there, you know, and it was just a place where you can go and hang out and go to Carl's Jr. and get some food and like kick it. And it was, you know, people were playing dice, smoking weed, like it was insane, you know. Wow. It was I mean, for
Fights.
Yeah, it was chaos.
It was crazy. I mean, I'm not suggesting kids grow up like this, but I remember going there when I was like 14. I saw fights, drugs, alcohol, sex, more fights, drugs, alcohol, sex, amazing skateboarding.
In the mix.
Criminal people that were just there to steal stuff from tourists or new kids, or people would just come up and focus your board. And like, I mean, just crazy. It was if you give a kids a plot of land, and their age, you know, 14 to 30, and you put all that in the mix in a city, and you had inner city kids. I mean, you had everything.
Yeah.
I mean, it was beautiful, but it was also why when Carl came up to me, I was like, okay, like you seem really nice, but I was like a little like, all right, like seeing knowing everything else that I'd seen there.
Yeah.
You know, it was insane.
Trust somebody, and just
yeah. Wow. But fortunately, like he's amazing. Everyone there was just incredible. Like I met everyone, and you know, like I said, Chico and Scott and everyone was just so amazing and so welcoming and nice. So
yeah. And how long did it kind of take to kind of make your name? Because there's like no internet back then. Like you're the guy for the photo. Like, what's his famous photo he's talking about?
He's referring to Eric Costin.
Okay.
Back nose blunt slid. Hubba hideout, which was one of the crazier tricks, probably the craziest trick done on it, up to when it got torn down.
Why was it called Hubba's hideout? I know this, but I'm gonna prompt it.
Well, because people would smoke crack there, because it was like a hideout, like it was there was under some trees, and like it was kind of like a cutty spot, so you know that's why people called crack, and they'd hang out there. Yeah. And you know, on this photo he's referring to, there's all kinds of sketchy graffiti on it, and so it was. As far as skateboard spots go, it was amazing. It was like an amazing spot. And so it's one of the photos that I've shot over the years that's probably more looked back on than others, because it was the cover of Transworld, the photo annual. Like it was amazing. Was
that your first cover too?
It actually was my first cover.
That's sick.
Did they pay you? I always wonder, because in skateboarding, I always wonder, like, or would you probably would have done it just for the.
No, they paid me. Everyone paid me, and
you still would have done the cover though, probably, right?
Oh yeah,
hell yeah, for exposure. Yeah.
No, I got paid $500
for the cover of Transworld.
Yes.
Hey, Transworld, I don't know you guys. We got to step up your game. The kids coming up are like, not. But it's actually a thing, because now I think people think, how will I make a living doing something? But what I think is so beautiful about your story is that I never once heard like, oh, I did this to make money. Like you worked at Mad Circle, or didn't you worked at the Gap?
Well, I worked at the Gap. I worked in the stock room in the back.
Nice.
It sucked because I had to be at work at like 4:30 in the morning. Wow. I was pretty much always either still drunk or hungover when I got to work. And sometimes I'd pull all the shelves into the corner, because there's the one on Powell Street. It's massive shelves. And I would just lay in like a bunch of like clothes and like take a nap in the back, all the way in the back of the stock room. But one day when I was working there, this is before I worked for Mad Circle, Scott Johnston came in and was like, hey, I don't know who it was, but someone flaked on him to shoot a photo. He's like, hey, I need a photo for an ad. And so he's like, can you do it? And I'm like, sure. So I went home, got my camera, shot the photo, got the film processed, handed in, got paid like $250. My mind was blown. I was like, whoa, this is way more than I make in 2 weeks of folding shirts at the Gap at 4:30 in the morning. So I next day quit my job. And was like, I'm done.
Just went for it.
And then shortly thereafter, I started taking a lot more photos, because Grant had sent me film, and then got a retainer from Transworld, and then started working. I got a small salary from Mad Circle.
So the retainer, so you can only shoot for them, basically?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because, that was Thrasher territory.
Oh, yeah.
And so, Transworld didn't have someone in, SF. And, and I, of course, I loved both magazines, but I looked up to Grant and was, had correspondence with him ever since I was in 8th grade.
Yeah.
And it was funny because when I would you'd see Jake Phelps, editor, Thrasher at the time. And, I'm sure you've heard he's gnarly. Yeah. And then whenever he'd see me bombing a hill, he's like, what's up, Grant? Because I worked for Trans World. And I always took it as a compliment. I'd be like, fuck you, Jake. Like, just keep skating. You know, it was like this thing where it was like I was the Trans World guy in SF for a little bit.
So was there crazy like competition between those two? Probably, right? Thrasher and Trans World?
There was, but I mean, I skated in the city and, I was a skateboarder, I was a photographer. So there was nothing weird for me. You know what I mean? It was like Jake was only messing with me like he messed with everyone else.
One thing that I think is different about you, and I know there are other photographers that skate and skate well, but like unlike filmers, and by the way, what I learned the hard way is that you can never call a photographer a filmer. I once asked Mike, I was like, do you ever shoot any like video? And he's like, come on now.
Well, I think he referred to me as a filmer.
What's that? Oh, yeah. So
right. I maybe took slight offense
exactly.
to that. So.
Exactly. So there's a similar thing in medicine, but I'm not going to say it because I don't want to offend anybody. But I think for filmers have to keep up. They have to push, right? Ollie up a curb or like keep up. And some of the stuff that people will do, like GX1000, the kids that bomb these crazy hills now.
Yeah, the
guys that follow them might even be gnarlier because they're holding a camera.
Totally.
If you think about it.
That shit's crazy.
But in terms of, you were one of the few photographers that I knew of that was good at skateboarding also. There were others like Spike actually could ride and like do some stuff.
Yeah,
but
Spike Jones skates?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that's cool. We're not comparing skateboarding skills here, but like, yeah, definitely. And he's known to make a good movie every now and then.
Totally.
Just kidding. He's amazing, right? Of course.
Incredible.
So talk about filmers, and photographers. But yeah, Mike, I think was unique in that you were in the fold in EMB. Like I knew who you were because you were considered a skateboarder and a photographer, or a photographer and a skateboarder. Whereas a lot of photographers that we knew at the time, they were liked, but they didn't look like they could do much more than push. They were real good at the sitting part and the crouching part. I'm not trying to insult anyone, but they weren't going to lip slide brown marble benches. They weren't going to bomb down Market Street.
Yeah.
Right. Hit the Pine Street bump, as you said, right. or head to any of the major spots and actually skate.
Yeah.
And so I think if you actually do the thing that you're taking photos of, I do think it gets you faster cred.
Well, you're like kind of in the fold with everything, with everyone a little bit more. And, I wish that maybe I weren't, or I didn't love skateboarding as much at the time because I would have way more photos. I mean, I literally took enough photos to like buy weed, pay rent. That's it. So then if I'm not
going to ask what your budget was.
It was it was less than $1,000 a month. Oh. Yeah. So,
wow.
Yeah. So
what year was that?
94. And I moved, it's pretty much 98, moved to LA. Started working for Girl Skateboards at the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So were you a big partier too?
Not huge partier per se, stoner. Okay. Absolutely. Like grade A stoner. And, but not a massive partier. I didn't start drinking until like later, but still didn't like party. I just drank because I was always around it on tour and with people. And it was just like what everyone around me kind of did.
Yeah, so. It's a big thing in skateboarding, even still probably, right?
Yes. I mean, less so now, I think, that maybe then.
Yeah.
But I loved skating so much and loved shooting photos and unfortunately loved smoking weed a bunch of the time. But just didn't love partying as much as I loved those other 2 or 3 things.
Yeah.
So
when did it take, then you just pretty much full-time skateboard photographer?
Yeah, as soon as I quit working at the Gap in 94, that's it. So I lived in the city about 3 months, and then that's what I did for a living. And that was it. I haven't had a normal job since.
Since?
No.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing,
Lifer.
Man.
Yeah.
Lifer.
Yeah, it's 28 years I've been doing the same thing. So, wow. Yeah.
That's incredible, man.
I have a question about Girl. So, because I remember, even though I basically left skateboarding at that point, always kept an eye on it. I remember when there was that big exodus of guys from San Francisco. We call it the city because we're from there, but of course, if you're living in New York, that's like cities in New York. But San Francisco, unless otherwise stated, the city means San Francisco in this conversation. But I remember hearing, Mike Carroll and Henry and everyone's moving down to LA, and it was like this big deal.
Yes.
It was like, wow, like, are people leaving the city? Mm-hmm. Is it no longer the Mecca for skateboarding? So what was that like coming down here to Los Angeles, and how do you get in the fold with Girl?
Well, I was friends with, Mesa, Carol, Chico, like all those guys lived in the city. And at the time, like in the late 90s, there was this like weird tech bubble, not like it is now, but it's like things started getting extremely expensive. So that's why everyone fled the city and went down to LA.
Yeah.
And for, like for Chico and Mike, like Girl was down there at the time. And I just coincidentally, I was having my son Noah. He was born in mid 98. And so that's where his mom's family lived, and there was more stability there. So I moved down to LA at the same time as all those guys. Yeah. And I remember showing up at Carol's house, and I was like, oh, it's Mesa, it's Scott, it's Chico, it's Tony Ferguson. I'm like, this is amazing. This is just like we're in San Francisco. Yeah. And so I started like hanging out with those guys all the time and shooting photos because, I now had a reason to shoot more photos than just to buy weed and pay rent because I was having a child.
Yeah, totally.
So I was like going out with them all the time. And then, Rick and Mike just decided to put me on salary and shot all the stuff for 4-Star.
Howard.
Yes, Rick Howard.
Another Midwest guy, right?
He's from Canada.
Oh, really?
Vancouver, if I'm not mistaken.
That's Midwest to me. No, just kidding. Just kidding.
I could be wrong about exactly where in Canada, but I do.
Sorry, I have tons of Canadian friends. Just joking.
Is there a big difference with San Francisco skate scene and then Los Angeles? Obviously, all the hills, just
you need a car.
Yeah, a car or two. Yeah.
You absolutely needed a car, and
True.
you were in your car all the time.
All day. Yeah.
So I went from not having a car because I got rid of the red Pontiac Sunbird convertible. And then just, skated around the city for years.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden spent most of my time in the car. Because when I moved to LA, again, I knew I was having my son. And so I would go out on like 2 or 3 sessions a day. Like I was just all over the city shooting, grinding, like shooting skateboard photos all day, every day.
Wow.
But it was fun. That's what I loved doing. I loved being around, my friends, skateboarding, and shooting photos. And at the time there was like 5 or 6 magazines. They were all getting printed, getting used by Girl. And so it was incredible. And the fact that I, had the opportunity to work for Girl at all the best dudes, it was like Costin and Guy, and like, it was incredible. It was like so much fun.
Were you living with Noah's mom at that point?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. We lived with her parents up in Calabasas.
How old were you when Noah arrived?
24.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now
Same age as my
young.
son is now. Wow. Yeah. My son's 24
Who's
now.
a pretty decent skateboarder too.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Really?
He's amazing. Yeah.
Street
Good
skater
stuff.
too?
Street skater, excellent style, hates everything. It's amazing.
This is what Mike's always talking about. Skateboarders just hate everything.
I know, man.
Well, it's the dopest thing. I mean, it's like, it's not that they hate everything, but they're they have high quality control. Let's just say that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you show up with weird gear or with just, if your kit's off, like you better be able to bring the skateboarding part because they will wreck you. And even on social media.
Totally.
Like I love reading the comments that skateboarders leave about comments, about comments and about other skateboarders. They don't care how famous or how top somebody is. They'll just tear you up. So.
Yeah, it's gnarly. And my son, he has very good taste in skateboarding.
Yeah.
He very much likes the generation that I came from and grew up shooting photos when he was born, which is amazing. Like we were having dinner, a few months ago, and he's like, when's the last time you watched the Chocolate Tour? And that's a video that we made when I was working for Girl. And I'm like, I don't know, it's probably been like 10, 15 years. He's like, well, let's watch it. And he was like
cool,
tripping,
man.
seeing me in the video. And like, he's like, is that you? Like in the beginning of Carol's part. And I'm like, yep. And he's like, wow. He's like, you look crazy. And I'm like, so it's dope. It's fun.
It's amazing how big skateboarding is. Olympics is everything about how it's just beautiful, man.
It is.
It's so crazy. I heard during the pandemic, like, you couldn't get a skateboard at all. Like, people, they were flying off the shelves. Everybody's trying to learn how to skate when on lockdown. Like,
skateboarders
crazy.
loved the pandemic because there were no security.
Yeah, nobody was out.
Spots were open.
Yeah.
No one was in the street.
There was no traffic.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
It was beautiful, man.
Yeah.
So the Art of Skateboarding, is that your first book?
It is.
That was 2009?
It was published in 2009 by Powerhouse. It was a trip. It was the first time when I was going through making that book that I was like, man, like I've been doing this a long time. Because I actually looked at the dates of the film and I'm like, wait, that was 15 years ago.
Wow.
And now I'm looking at them and I'm like, wait, that's almost 30 years ago. It's a trip. So it was, it was fun to make.
Yeah. And so you just been collecting them and just realized I just want to put out a book?
Well, I mean, it kind of got started. Ken Block was like, hey, Blabes. That's what he used to call me. He's
Blabes.
like, yeah, Blabes.
I like that.
Or Blaze, because I earned that nickname.
I know. Jason Ellis, when wild Jason Ellis, Ellis, right? Yeah. When he still refers to Mike, who I just referred to him as Blabac, as Blaze, because, and we'll ask you about, I should say, your story about, stopping, weed and alcohol, but I guess it was a big part of what you were known for in addition to your photos and skateboarding.
I mean, my last name lends itself to certain nicknames, and Blaze just kind of panned right out. So yeah, I did kind of earn that one.
So why are you taking everything weed all the time, even when you're taking photos and skating?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. And do you smoke weed still?
No, absolutely no.
How long now?
It's been years. I mean, it's been a little over 3 years, like completely, totally sober. Just no drinking, no nothing. Which was back then to me seemed insane.
Yeah, was it hard?
No, it wasn't hard at all to stop. I met this guy.
He changed your life, this guy?
Yeah. Yes.
It's mutual.
Yeah.
We sound like a couple, but we're not. But we're not. But,
was it affecting your life?
No, absolutely. I mean, I'd just gotten back from New York and it rained the whole time. And I got into the cadence of drinking a lot. And I still maintained, being the best father that I could be, being on top of my work, still doing everything I could for DC, doing a good job at everything. I mean, I have a Midwest work ethic. I try and do as good of a job as humanly possible. But, I was starting to get to the point where I realized that I was working twice as hard to be like 70% as good as I probably could be otherwise. Gotcha. And I was just starting to get that idea. And I met Andrew and, we were chatting for a while and I was like, I forget what I said. I was like, hey, how do I get healthy or some shit like that?
This is pretty funny because
how'd you guys meet too? I wonder about that.
We were at a 4th of July barbecue in 2017, I think it was.
2019,
yeah. Excuse me. So he's the one with the memory, despite his years of cannabis use. Whereas I was never really big into alcohol or drugs. I lucked out. I could take it or leave it. So in any case, at 2019, we were at a barbecue. Our friend Jake Rosenberg, who I grew up with, and actually was the guy who drove me up to Embarcadero and makes movies and commercials and things of that sort. Made Waiting for Lightning, the documentary with Danny Way. Anyway, we're at Jacob's backyard, and what I remember is that he was like, Mike Blabac's here, and I was like, no way, Blabac? Like Blabac photo? I didn't even know he had a first name, but I knew the photos. Greg Hunt was there too, another skateboard photographer. I was like, wow. And Mike came up to me and we were talking, and your words were, hey, I'm a pile. Can you help me out? That was what he said. Literally, I'm a pile. And I said, and I looked at him, Mike's a pretty tall guy. And so taller people can have a bit more weight on them.
It was spread out.
Before you would think of that person as overweight, right? Because just the way it's distributed. And I looked at him and I was like, I don't know. And then, I don't know, you probably remember what I said next, but that's what I remember.
Well, you were like, do you drink? And I'm like, lots. And, you healthy? Do you do? I'm like, no, absolutely not, because I was like, I'd go out to lunch with Grant, have a beer, or traveling on tour, dudes are drinking all day in the van. That's what I did. I drank all day, every day. And somehow maintained, I was on top of my work. I was on top of, being a dad as much as I could. And
were you married then too?
No.
Okay.
No. Separated from my kid's mom years, probably 14 years ago. So
okay.
Yeah.
Were you drinking when you were married too?
Yes. Yeah. Stopped for a brief period in the middle of that, and then just dove right back into it.
Yeah. And weed every day.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
All day.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
But did you really party as a kid though? You chewed tobacco, we know that, but
no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just happened when you moved into the skateboard world. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, he asked me, he's like, do you drink? And I was like, oh yeah, absolutely. And he was like, well, how old are you? And I was 44 at the time. And, he's like, yeah, you should probably stop that. And I was like, okay. And then gave me a bunch of other, info. And I'm like, all right, fuck, this seems like pretty valuable. This dude seems pretty smart.
Yeah.
I should probably, listen to everything. And I remember you sent me super long text messages about how to work out, how to eat, everything. And I listened to all of it. I followed every letter. You know, because
That's
I'm
amazing,
like,
man.
well, it's not some kid that works at GNC, you know. Like,
No,
I figured,
know.
like,
but just that timing and like being there at the same time, that
no,
awesome.
it's amazing. And I knew like something in me. I was like, okay, I have to listen to this. And the next day, I joined a gym and started, and haven't drank a drop of booze since.
That's fucking
or
awesome.
smoked any weed.
No.
Yeah.
That's incredible, man.
Isn't that incredible?
Fucking Huberman, man.
I think. Well, no, I mean, I don't take credit. I think the advice I gave. It's funny how we remember. Two people remember the stories differently, but yours is accurate. But yeah, you said I'm a pile, and I said then we started talking about alcohol, and I said you should quit. I am of the belief. Listen, a lot of people out there have heard, a couple glasses of wine is healthy for you. Look, you'd have to drink so much wine to get the resveratrol, the antioxidants. It's impossible, and it's very clear that. If you're thinking about health, I'm not talking about the effects of alcohol, but if you're talking about health, 0 is far healthier for you than any. And the limit on where it starts to become a problem for your health in terms of increased cancers, microbiome disruption, like not minor things, is 2 drinks a week. And most people drink more than that.
Oh, yeah.
And the health benefits of not drinking at all are enormous. And I'm saying this not as someone who went through AA.
Yeah.
It's like I'm not like a, gone sober kind of guy. Like it's just that's the reality. But I remember you said, how should I work out? And I said, just get on a bike or a treadmill or run and just for like a minute, just go all out as if someone was chasing you with a dart full of poison.
Yes, a needle full of poison.
Needle full of poison.
Yeah.
And then jog for a minute and then just keep doing that until you can't do it anymore. So the advice at first was pretty crude, and then I gave them a bunch of detailed protocols.
Yeah. So I did that. Like I started eating between 1 and 8, and then every morning, at least 5 to 6 days a week, go to the gym and run for about an hour.
Wow.
Intermittently, about a minute or so every 5 minutes, like hard.
You really listened, man. Yeah.
Yeah. And like hard and almost instantly, I mean, within a couple of months, dropped like 60 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah. Like completely felt, I mean, I was just completely different. I mean, I remember I had a job. I went to China, shot photos on a mountain and, in the middle of nowhere. And I was just like, felt like I'd run up and down the mountain with all my gear. Like it was amazing. Like I felt so good. And so I just kept it going,
It's like the first real time being sober, being a photographer too in the skateboard world, right? At that point?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And was it a different feeling? Was it different? Did you see things differently?
No, not at all. I mean, I enjoyed it so much more. I enjoyed.
That's what I mean. Like you felt different being sober. In the world.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I didn't feel differently in a bad way. It was like it was an amazing experience. Like I was just like I enjoyed photography the same way that I did as a kid, like poring over books again and like, just editing photos more and shooting more and like just doing more of everything.
Life changing.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I wasn't like holding myself back by like drinking all day and like just being a bile. So yeah.
That's incredible, man.
Yeah,
it's pretty wild. And then when the pandemic hit, and I remember at the beginning when everyone was under strict lockdown, and then it kind of people went back in varying degrees depending on how scared they were or not, etc. I remember we were getting on the phone, and doing with a friend of ours, with Jacob, we started doing the Wim Hof type breathing. Yeah, so like we were keeping it because I lived alone up in Oakland at that time, and Mike was down in San Diego, and Jacob was here in LA, and so we were I was super isolated. I was like, I'm never going to see anyone again, and even though my girlfriend lived nearby, like we weren't spending as much time with each other then, and so we would get on the phone every morning and do Wim Hof breathing and time each other, like who could do breath holds the longest and this kind of thing. So I realize now, like we got into it.
Yeah, just 3 dudes just breathing into the phone.
That's not weird at all, man.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
That was amazing.
You could turn your life around at any time, any age. It doesn't matter.
Oh, dude, yeah. I mean, like by the time, by the time I was 45, I was like in better shape than I had been since I was in my 20s, and now I'm in even better shape.
This guy's a beast. He's very humble, Midwest humble.
Really?
Oh yeah. The workout this morning, like I did some like sets and reps at the gym. Yesterday I took my week on Fridays. I do kind of some interval training, jog. Okay, this guy, it's nuts. I think the same spirit that like had you jump in the car, get out to San Francisco, work at the Gap at 4:30 in the morning. Like he's very understated. So I'm gonna.
He's so low key.
Yeah,
so
I'm gonna embarrass him a little bit here.
You're a savage in the gym.
He's a savage, but also, with photos, right? Okay, so we'll talk about that a little bit where it's at now. But Mike stayed up at my place before, and I'll look at like 10 at night. And he's there just going through thousands of photos, picking the perfect one, editing, doing what he needs to do. It's just the work ethic is crazy. And then when it came to the exercise thing, his morning workout, quote unquote, hop on the bike, is get on the Airdyne bike. That's the one with the handles, the resistance one, and go for 30 minutes. Yeah, like basically all out for 30 minutes, which is like sprinting basically for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And then, recently I was like,
it's like Clark Kent over here, man.
Yeah. How many years have you? Yeah, I got the glasses. How many years? Let's see. So it was 2019, 20, 21, and then this year he started doing the resistance training, like some weight training, and it's the same thing. It was like I went down to San Diego, showed him how to do just a basic upper body workout, and then you take a day and do your cardio, and then you do a lower body workout. You just kind of keep alternating. Maybe throw an extra day of rest in there. Yeah. Just so you keep your body strong and not to get huge or anything, but just to stay strong.
Totally.
So this guy, I do that, and then I'll talk to him, a week later. I'm like, how the workout's going? He's like, oh yeah, did upper body, rested lower body. Like he doesn't go off program.
Yeah.
Even if he's out in Las Vegas doing a 6-day shoot with Ken Block, you have to talk about the car
you're
stuff.
You're still working.
I'm like, he's not sleeping. Wow. And it's like, or sleeping in the day for a few hours. But he's like, oh yeah, but the gyms here in Vegas are really nice. So no negotiating. Like, do I do it today or not do it today?
Yeah, every day.
It's just consistency.
Yeah.
Well, it's awesome. The same as like not, it's like easy for me to not drink. It would be difficult for me to kind of drink. And like the working out is like the same thing. Like,
all in, man.
Instead of like figuring out like, well, maybe I could work out then. It's just, again, like the advice I'm getting from this dude is extremely valuable.
Yeah,
and
for
like,
sure.
Oh, do this. I'm like, okay. And it's like, I'm stoked. Like, I feel so good doing it.
So it's every day you're on it.
Yeah.
Something every day.
Yeah. So, and it's amazing. I mean, I think you looked at me in New York and you're like, you look pretty good. And I was like, oh, thanks, dude. And you're like, but you should work out. Like, you should do resistance training.
I'm honest too. Well, you had leaned out, but then what happens is at any age or depending on your genetics, muscle isn't about being big. It's the most metabolically active tissue. So it allows you to eat more. It actually is great because you feel hungry, but you eat more, but you get leaner. Yeah. And also it's great. It supports your hormones. There's all this great stuff that you can do without medication.
Totally.
And you don't need a big budget for it. Like if you can't get on a gym membership, you can literally do burpees and pull-ups and dips. You can do prison style workouts. Have you seen those guys?
Yes, I have, man.
They're amazing. And
burpees are no joke too.
No joke. And chin-ups and dips and all that will really take you there. But I think also your work ethic is so strong that occasionally, I think a few weeks back, I was like, it's okay to take a day off every once in a while. Because you're like, I'm feeling really sore. I'm like, you can take a day off every once in a while.
I mean, did you take a day off drinking?
What do you mean?
Did you ever not drink? We drinking every day
before I stopped?
Yeah.
Oh no, I.
All right, so the same when now you're working out every day.
Yeah.
It's a good switch.
I had a good work ethic with drinking too.
Well, so. but with the nutrition thing too, like I was like, can you delay eating until 11 or noon or 1? Do the intermittent fasting thing, and there are other ways to do it. But for a lot of people, not eating is eating. Like I'm not the kind of person that can eat half a croissant. It's like I'm gonna eat the croissant.
Totally.
So. I'd rather just eat between certain hours and then once you start eating between certain hours, you actually, believe it or not, people think, oh, then you just gorge yourself with garbage. No, you actually make better choices.
I agree.
And the healthier stuff tastes better because you're hungrier.
Yeah.
So you're really good about this. Like you eat oatmeals. Overnight oats, all oatmeal, berries.
So
I mean, you're not a vegan, but he is, and I'm the omnivore in the room. But I know, but you eat really healthy.
Yeah, now I do, because it's the same thing. You think about like what you're putting in your body within that 8-hour or 6-hour window, whatever you're doing.
8 hours, eat the best you can. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just wake up, work out, coffee, and then in the afternoon, eat a massive like oatmeal, fruit, bananas, like everything like that, and then I eat a big dinner, and that's it.
Yes, intermediate fasting. You can have coffee in the morning, right? Black coffee.
Oh, well, this guy, the one thing he is not moderate about.
It's coffee?
Well, no, he's got a few things he's not moderate. I mean, the coffee thing. Yeah. This guy, okay, wait. All right. The photographers I'm realizing of Mike's caliber are they're almost neurotic, like in terms of their detail. This guy travels with his Nespresso machine.
Wow.
He brings the machine.
Yeah.
Why can't you just get one? Oh, yeah, it's your own thing. Yeah. Certain kind you use.
No, I mean, like Andrew mentioned, I was just on a job in Vegas and working 6 nights.
True.
And I just wake up, espresso's right there.
Nice.
Yeah, it's easy.
So coffee's a big part of you every day.
Yeah. Yeah. Haven't given that up.
Do you drink coffee, Andrew, or no?
I do. I have this thing about delaying, waiting an hour and a half to 2 hours because otherwise, after waking up before having it, otherwise you get a crash. But I love yerba mate.
Me too, man.
I brew my own. Just people should know, don't drink the smoked yerba mates. Those ones are carcinogenic. They'll give you mouth cancer. But the smoked flavors, but the just basic yerba mate,
so good.
It's such a nice clean caffeine.
It is.
It's got a little bit of a laxative effect, which might people like so in the morning too. Like it's good for your digestion. It's not a nice topic, but clear out. You also listen. A lot of people don't want to exercise because they feel weighed down by food. And the nice thing about intermittent fasting too is you have that block of time early in the day where if you have your mate or your coffee and your water, like pretty soon you feel like you want to move.
Yes.
So that's kind of
What about working out on empty stomach? That's okay?
I love that.
And running on empty stomach.
Yeah. You have to make sure you eat enough when in the evening. Like if you're going to run hard in the morning and you skip dinner the night before and you're trying to do it in the morning, it can get tricky. But that's why eating a good sized dinner in the evening is not bad if you're going to fast until 2 p.m. the next day.
So like one great meal a day is okay?
Yeah. Some people think one might not be enough. For kids and for teens, like Max was just in here, you don't want to start fasting and dieting as a kid. But I think certainly as you get, like one or two, I think 2 meals a day or a meal and a snack, sure.
Yeah. I love it. It's a life changer.
Oh, it's insane.
And just when you start working on and taking care of your body, you also want to start putting good things because the diet is just as important as the workout, right? Even more so, right?
Absolutely. And you notice more.
Yeah.
Just think about like when you're drinking, you grab for whatever's in front of you. And then when I'm not anti-alcohol. I think it sounds like I am, but it's one of these things where you just make such better choices when you're making better choices.
Yeah.
It dominoes.
Yeah. And what about people like, I only smoke cigarettes when I drink? Like, what is that connection with that? Where people like to smoke cigarettes when they drink sometimes, but they don't smoke every day, only when they drink.
Yeah, the combination of nicotine and alcohol is a different kind of drunk,
and
it lets you drink longer.
You ever do that?
Yeah. I did all kinds of dumb shit when I drank. I would make pizzas at 2:00 in the morning. It was like that's just was normal. And it was part of being a pile. And so now, like, I absolutely don't do that. So
I have a question about the car thing. The Gymkhana thing,
yes.
Ken Block,
yeah,
and because you're quote unquote skateboard. Do you call yourself a skateboard photographer?
I call myself a photographer.
Okay.
I don't want to be.
You do lifestyle.
I don't want to be hoity-toity or anything, but I do a lot of commercial work. I love skateboarding, and that'll always be a part of who I am.
You're a skater too.
That'll always be a part of who I am as a person. So no matter what I go on in life to do, that's a part of who I am. It's a part of who you are. It's part of who Andrew is. It's just that's how it is. But
it's in your blood.
Yes. But I love photography before I even knew what a skateboard was. So I call myself a photographer. I don't care. You can call me whatever you want, but
like you've helped create people's brands quite a bit. The people that I think of, and maybe you could talk about Love Park in Philly and Stevie Williams.
Ooh,
and
legend.
Kalis.
Yeah.
A bit, and then we should probably also talk about Danny.
Yes. So. Well, DC. I still work with DC Shoes.
How many years now?
20.
That's
it's my 23rd year.
It's incredible.
I'm
you with DC?
I'm a creature of habit.
Are you a DC?
No, not really. Had
for some
DC
reason,
shoes.
for some reason, I thought that you had a relationship to DC.
No, I never had one until now. Thanks.
You're very welcome. No, so that kind of, I worked for Girl. And then at the time, Rick Howard, Mike Carroll, Huff, Scott, all these guys skated for DC. So it was kind of a natural transition. I remember Ken Block called me out of the blue one day and was just like, "Do you want to work for DC?" And my mind was blown because I was like, "Oh my God, really?" Because they were the first people to do 2-page spread ads, which was a huge deal, in the mid '90s. And I love their advertising. I loved, their shoes had like the most technology in them. They were like, made out, kind of like they had straps to keep the tongue in place, which blew my mind. I'm like, this is insane,
Were those like the big bulky ones?
Yes.
Remember those big like shoes back in the 90s, those big like Audios, all those different brands?
Yes.
I can't imagine even skating in those now, man.
People do skate them again.
Like throwback.
Oh, yeah. So Ken called me kind of out of the blue to start working for them. And that's how I started working for DC. And that was in March of 99.
Wow, man.
Yeah.
That says a lot about you too, man, being there that long with the company. Because I'm sure they had a million different like changes in who's working there and owners and all that.
Yeah.
Is it independently owned? Is it still an independent brand?
It's owned by, it was bought by Quicksilver in 2009. And then Quicksilver was bought by someone else. And it's owned by them now. And yeah. So.
Is there anybody else at that company that was there when you were there, first got signed? It still works there?
No.
Wow.
No. Just.
Why should you just give it to you?
Yeah, that's have shares.
DC leadership, listen
that's
up.
Crazy.
Just give it to the guy that's been there the longest.
As far as an employee, quote unquote, an employee goes, no.
Any skaters been sponsored for 20 years by that same brand?
Yes, Josh Kalis. Okay. Next year be 25 years.
Wow.
And Danny Way.
You're like Caballero with Vans, the longest selling skate shoe in the history of Vans is the half cab.
Yeah.
So cool, man.
I remember seeing that shoe and thinking, whoa. And then you realize like, yeah, why couldn't you just do a half thing?
Yeah, why couldn't you just cut
Skateboarders are cool that way, right? Punk rockers too, right? It's like, why? Yeah. It'd be ridiculous to just turn your shirt backwards just to do it, right? So just that kind of like ridiculous creativity is not creativity. But every once in a while something pops up in skateboarding or punk rocking and you go, yeah, that's just a better way to do it or a better other way to do it.
Yeah,
right?
100%.
Yeah, Josh Kalis called me. He's like, hey, man. Because that's how he talks. He's just like, are we the only two people that's like been there for as long? And I'm like, yeah, pretty much. I mean, that and Danny. And he's like, wow, that's such a trip. And like Josh and I, when we were kids, he lived in Grand Rapids, Michigan for a time. And I lived in Lansing, which is about an hour drive. And, we met one another, the skateboard community was pretty small at the time. And, back then. And so we skated together when we were kids. And like it's funny, he got in trouble. He stole his dad's baseball cards. He had like a crazy baseball card collection. Sold them so he can buy boards.
Wow.
And got grounded and told his dad that I worked for Transworld, even though I absolutely did not. I just had a camera and would go down and shoot photos of Josh. Just whatever, just because like that
make it look like it's worth it to his dad. I need the board. I'm getting photos taken of me.
Exactly. So that was the only way he was allowed out of the house. Damn. Was I would drive down there, and then we kind of like didn't see one another. And I remember I walked out of the Gap one day with like my ridiculous like Gap clothes on to get a pizza across the street at Blondie's, and like I looked over and he's like sitting on the ground next to Jamie Thomas, and I'm like, what are you doing here? He's like, what are you doing here? And he was filming in the city, and we're like, dude, we started hanging out, and we've been friends for like 30 years. It's crazy.
I hope his dad like understands that those cards really took him somewhere.
Well,
the baseball cards.
I was gonna say a kid that steals his dad's baseball or steals anything from their parent. Did he think that his dad just wasn't gonna notice, or he was willing to take the beating?
Those things
pretty sure he's willing to do whatever it took to skateboard.
Wow,
just like any other skateboarder.
But he's still in the industry. So his dad's okay. It was kind of worth it.
Josh has done well. He's been a part of DC's, had tons of pro shoes, and he eventually bought his dad those baseball cards.
No
back.
way.
Yeah,
did he really?
Wow,
yeah.
dude, that's fucking amazing.
Yeah.
Good so man. Either that or his dad was coming after him with like AK-47 for all these years.
What a good kid. That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, Josh is a good dude.
And what about Danny Way? You guys go back, you and Danny Way?
Yes. I mean, well, the first time I ever met Danny, coincidentally, was the first pro contest he ever won was in 1989.
Holy shit.
And my friend, this is the dude's real name. His name was Stony Ball. I was hanging out with him. He could drive. I couldn't drive yet at the time. I didn't have my license yet. And we picked Danny up and, dropped him off at the hotel and like hung out with Danny a little bit when I think Danny was like 14 at the time.
Wow, man.
Yeah. And there was a
Texas contest?
No, it was Lansing, Michigan.
Okay.
It was a vert contest at the Lansing Civic Center, and I shot photos because I was kind of
1989.
Yeah, I was quasi sponsored by the skate shop at the time it was called Michigan Skate. Now it's called Modern Skate. But I would get, I'd get stuff from the shop and worked for the shop as a kid. And so I was allowed into the contest to shoot photos.
Yeah.
And so I shot photos. So I have photos of Danny from that contest. And so we didn't really meet again until almost exactly 10 years later when I started working for DC Shoes.
And you were involved in shooting all the mega ramp.
Yes.
When Danny first started building those huge gaps in the desert, because people weren't doing that then.
It was insane.
The crazy. Yeah. So Mike's got some. Tell us the story about the the railing, the bump railing.
Oh my God.
And the Great Wall, because obviously Danny jumped the Great Wall of
China
on a broken ankle.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, Mike was there.
Destroyed his foot the day before. But it's funny because the first time I saw Danny after whatever our random, meeting in Lansing, Michigan in 1989 was in 1999 when he was jumping out of the helicopter for the MTV Sports and Music Festival.
Remember that?
It was like 2 years after he'd done it in an airstrip.
Such a weird decision to jump out of a helicopter.
It was
as a skateboarder.
Well, and it was like a shit show because it was like an MTV contest.
Yeah.
It was like on the top of the parking garage, the Hard Rock, and I'm like, dude, what is this guy doing? And I was just kind of thrust into the fold at DC. Ken's like, yeah, you're gonna go to Vegas. Danny's gonna jump out of the helicopter again. I'm like, okay, like cool, like it was kind of like it was a trip. And
you hadn't talked to him and seen him in 10 years?
No.
Okay.
No, I had met him, introduced myself again.
Yeah,
we were kids. And then, Danny was just like, all right, cool. Like, I think his mind was more on jumping out of a helicopter in the middle, of all this chaos. And so then, we shortly thereafterward, right around 2000, we started filming for the DC video, which got gnarly. I mean, Danny was just, on his shit then, and we were filming all the time. And that's when having 1,000 rolls of film at the ramp and the 6-7 hour sessions, and also going out with the rest of the team. It was insane. It was like, but then towards the end, when the deadline was approaching in 2003, he had the idea of making the mega ramp. And I remember not really understanding, Greg had kind of hey, don't really tell anyone, but Danny's got this thing out in the desert. And I remember driving over the hill, and no one had ever had the quarter pipe was 27 feet tall.
Wow.
And it was more wood than you would use to build a house.
Jesus.
And I just remember laughing. I actually chuckled when I drove over the hill and saw it. And it was insane. I mean, the first time he dropped in, and that one was gnarly because to save wood, because it costs so much to build that thing. So to save wood, they cut into the hillside. So the roll-in went basically through this cavern, and you jumped, the takeoff ramp, and then there's a 65-foot gap, and then you land, and then you blast into a 27-foot quarter pipe. And I just remember thinking this is insane.
You're saying that's crazy.
It is insane. No, it's just skateboarders are crazy, and then there's Danny, who it's just to dream something up, or that's the kind of thing you draw on some binder paper during class.
Yeah.
And even then you might not draw it that big.
Yeah.
No.
And then there he goes and does it.
Well, the first time he rolled in, he kind of just flailed through the air and was just kind of landed and had masonite burn all over his body. And I was wow, that was sketchy. And we were in the desert. We're in Awonga, California, which is an hour and 20 minutes inland from Temecula. We were in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And no cell phones, no cell phone reception, no paramedic. It's just us. And I was hammered, in the middle, just sick. It was a crazy experience. And we were we'd camp out there and just skate. So it was just.
Was anybody else dropping in on that ramp?
No. Well, there was no social media or anything back then. And so it was easier, to keep a lid on things, but it was just Danny skating. It was Greg Hunt, and there was a couple other, one or two other camera operators occasionally, and myself taking photos.
Wow,
and that's
man.
it. There was no one else out there. It was just us. And so there was no one skating with him because we wanted to keep a lid on it. We didn't want anyone to see the photos.
You want to be the one to build it and conquer it first, right? And do all kinds of crazy shit.
So it's he's launching himself on this thing, flying 70 feet over this gap and like going 20 plus feet in the air in this quarter pipe in the middle of the desert. And no one had ever done anything like that on a skateboard. So it was like mind blowing.
And did people hear about it in the skateboarding community? Like, heard about this mega ramp?
No, we kept it all.
Wow.
No one heard about it until they saw the DC video when it premiered.
And when did that? For how long after? Like,
that was came out it originally premiered in June of 2003. The mega ramp was in there, and then after the video premiered, he's like, "I want to build a rail." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, like fucking 45 miles an hour, like do a fucking front crook.
Fucking crazy,
and I was like,
man.
and I'm
that
like,
shit is crazy.
He's so aggro.
No, and it was so
fearless, man.
It was sketchy too. I mean, and it's funny because even China, and we'll get into that. It's like, when I've been lucky enough to photograph other things like Robbie Madison and like Ken Block and like, there's dudes with computers and they know exactly how much the car weighs and the angle of the hill and the wind speed. And it's like mapped out by people who are like, know what's going on.
Yeah.
And then they're
skateboarding. Where it's like, you're fucking spending $1 million. Like,
sorry, buddy.
That's all right. She's just saying,
keep going. It's all good.
It's like, he's literally just kind of mapping it out. Like, like pointing, like just pointing at the gap and like, I don't know, make it kind of like this. No consideration like how much he weighs or how much humidity's in the air, or like none of that shit. Like it was just like, and that's how he blasted his foot apart, because he came up short because the roll-in wasn't tall enough and the angle of the ramp, the takeoff ramp, wasn't steep enough.
Gotcha.
And so the same thing for the rail. I mean, he literally, like, I remember him being on the phone. I think he was like on the phone with Deerdick or something. And he's like, "Yeah, you should come out, check this out. Like, I'm going to build a rail. I'm going to nose blunt this thing. I'm going to do all this." And I remember being in the back seat of the car being like, this guy's insane. Like, this is not going to happen. Like, I kind of had my doubts. Yeah. And when we went out there, the cat was kind of out of the bag, and people had seen his mega ramp part in the DC video. So Jake Brown came out with us. And I remember he told Jake, he's like, "Yeah, just drop in and kind of just float over the gap." And Jake's like, "All right."
Just float over it.
Just kind of like ollie and kind of like cruise over the gap, And there's a long gap, which was like 65 feet about in its shortest. And then there was a shorter one, which was 45 feet. And the rail was built over the 45-foot gap. And, he just was like eyeballing where Jake was in the air, not taking into consideration that Jake's about a foot shorter than he is, or like nothing. And he's just like, "Yeah, make the rail like this big and make it a rainbow, because that's how you're going to grind it, because you're going up to it and you're flying across the gap." And it was like an uncapped piece of steel that you're going 40 plus miles an hour at.
Wow.
It was sketchy. So one of the first times he did it, his board just stuck into the rail. And I was like, "Wow, this is sketchy. Like, this could kill you." Yeah, it was gnarly.
So it stuck on, he flew off it?
He just kind of like flailed through the air, and his board went about an inch and a half into the piece of steel, like stuck into the end. I have a photo of it. It's insane. And he's like standing at the gap holding a 2x4 because he needed to bash his board out of the rail at the time.
Was he waxing it too after a while? Did he wax it?
No, he didn't. I don't think he waxed it at first. He just kind of like... Yeah, I mean, he's going 40 plus miles an hour. So it made the craziest sound. And there's nothing, no one could ever, like, seeing it in person was just absolutely incredible.
No, I remember seeing that and seeing the photos and the videos of it. And
crazy. He 50'd it, and then he nose grinded it, and then he Smith grinded it. And
you were there for the whole time? You saw all that?
I never missed a session.
Wow,
yeah.
Man.
And it was insane because, he's a maniac. And he's like, "Dude, you need to fucking get out here now." And I'm like,
that's
okay.
Pretty good Danny voice.
Yeah.
Do it again?
He's like, "Dude, fucking get out here right now." And I'm like, well, there's other guys on the team and they're all filming. He's like, "What are you going to do? Shoot photos on like a knee-high ledge or fucking 45 mile an hour fucking front crook?" Like, and I'm like, okay, I get it. Like, that's a good point. But like everyone, like I gotta shoot everyone. Like Greg and I were like, we were the only two dudes working for DC that were were working on the video.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So we were traveling the world. We were going to Spain for weeks on end, and we were all over the place. And meanwhile, like, this dude's out in the desert being like, dude, get out here. And like, we're
and nobody knows you're there either, man.
No one knew we were there.
That's one of the coolest parts about it.
Yeah, nobody knows.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up watching the young Danny Way, sometimes in person, and what Mike said earlier is true. He and Colin McKay and this kid Moses, that they call themselves the Red Dragons, and they wore little Red Dragon pendants. No joke.
Wow.
And Sluggo too. They just would skate for everyone else's like 1 or 2 runs on the ramp, they'd get 10. Like, they would just go.
Non-stop.
All night lock-ins where other people would stop and start partying at some point. They would literally skate all night and into the morning and then pack up and go. It was, I mean, they just had this extra gear, and Danny had an extra gear. And it just seems like he had laser focus and was going.
It was amazing. I mean, to see someone push something into a place that it had never been before, and to be able to be there and photograph it and like experience it was incredible. I mean, it was in everything. I even the lab where I dropped off my film, I'm like, hey, no one can see this shit.
Wow.
Like, do not share this with anyone. Like, if you absolutely not. Like, I was like very strict with them, and I processed all the black and white film myself and put everything into a binder. And when we were done filming, it was called the deluxe edition part. It came out in the end of 2003 because we filmed for a couple of months. And I remember Ken Block took Grant Britton, Dave Swift, left Transworld and started their own magazine called the Skateboard Mag.
Yeah.
And I remember Ken took a binder of all that film, and no one had ever seen it. And he like gave it to him and was just like, do you guys want this? And I was like, what did they say? In hindsight, I probably should have been there, but I was probably partying or doing something. I don't know. And, he was like, they were stoked. And so it ended up being the cover of the first Skateboard Mag, and they used everything. And I remember them sharing the photos with people who hadn't seen the part yet.
Yeah.
It was like dudes like Heath Kirchart and Chris Miller and Tony Hawk. Like, their impression of the photos for the first time. Like, I've never seen them before, and they were all just like, what is this? Like, this is insane. Like, this guy's like...
Did they all want to go there immediately and try it? The people that saw it first? Like, did Tony Hawk come there and everybody try to come?
Yeah, people did skate.
Yeah, I remember seeing that.
It was like, it was amazing. It was fun at that point because the cap, again, was out of the bag. So in like 2004, early 2005, people would come and like have sessions at the ramp before it eventually got torn down. Because it was this sketchy place called Point X in the middle of the desert, and like, I on the low, I was pretty happy we weren't going out there because it was a nightmare to drive. It was just dirty.
And why there? And I wonder how he found that spot. I'm like, I'm gonna do it here.
Well, it's funny because he's like always like, well, I don't know, it'll just fit right into the land. Like, he knew exactly where it needed to be in order to not use like a ton of wood, and how it would just, the roll in would go into the hillside, and the hill kind of rolled down, and that's how the landing went. And then the quarter pipe was built on a flat area of land. And luckily for me, it was built in an area where I could get back far enough and shoot it to where like you have to use a longer lens to give something like that some sort of perspective. Yeah. Because it was so gnarly.
So you saw Tony Hawk and other people skate there too as well?
Yeah. Yeah. After the deluxe edition part came out. And so that's kind of how the Great Wall thing happened. Is that, I don't know, he's going to China for something, and he looked down, saw the Great Wall, and was like, being Danny, like, I'm going to jump that. Fuck. And it kind of came to fruition pretty quickly. So that Mega Ramp thing came out in 2005, and by July, I think it was July 9th in 2005 is when he jumped the Great Wall.
And you out there too?
Yes.
Wow.
And it was weird because skate mentality, like, whatever. Like, he grinded a rail across something gnarlier in this fucking section of the wall, which it was gnarly. Well, that, and like looking back on it, it was such a unique experience because the government, invited us there. They had a work stoppage. Like, everyone in China was required to watch.
Wow, I didn't know that.
And so they were skateboarding.
It's amazing.
And so they were very
just an idea that he had.
Here, you don't even have to vote. There, you have to watch skateboarding.
You're required to watch it, and so they were super strict about us not skating the ramp. And so they had all these officials there, and all these people, Chinese government officials, like dudes from Beijing, and he's like, hey, dude, like, let's get photos of these guys. Let's get these guys out of here. I have to skate this fucking thing. Like, I have to see if it works. Because, again, he just eyeballed it. He didn't have people there with computers and shit.
Isn't it true that somebody died trying to do it a few days before, a mountain biker or something?
No, a few years prior, before. Someone tried to jump it on a mountain bike and died.
No way, man.
Yeah.
Was the whole country watching that?
I'm not sure. That is a good question.
They're like little kindergarten kids traumatized for life. It's like telling everyone to watch something in live is a serious commitment.
Well, this was very sketchy. I mean, the roll-in there was no that kind of goes without saying, but, the roll-in was built on the edge of the wall. And so, and they had these I think it was maybe 8 feet wide, but once something's 70 feet tall, 8 feet wide does not seem that wide.
You slide right off it.
Oh, it was insane. And they had basically 4x8 sheets of plywood on the side of it. So he quote unquote didn't go off the end. And he's like, dude, get that shit off there. I don't want that on there. And they reluctantly did. They didn't want to get it off. But back to getting rid of the officials. So we shot portraits with them. We did all this stuff. And eventually they left. And it was towards the end of the day, and it was very humid. The air was very thick.
Yeah.
And the roll-in wasn't tall enough. And the takeoff ramp wasn't steep enough, and he came up really short. And it was gnarly because I was there with his kid, and dude, it was insane. It was sketchy. And as soon as he took off, you could tell he wasn't gonna make it. And he just was running through the air fuck, and legs straight out, his feet were straight out and landed. I think it was his left foot, and just destroyed his foot, broke it in 3 places. And then just it sounded like a car crash because the ramp was on, scaffolding, so it was hollow.
Yeah.
And I was across shooting out of, there's all these guard gates all along the Great Wall for thousands of miles.
Sure.
And I was shooting out of one of those, and you could hear it echo. It was gnarly. And I was like,
oh my God.
Yeah, dude. I was like, dude, I don't know if he's dead. This is insane. And we'd just flown to China, I'm just this is way worse than getting kicked out of a spot.
I should just say a bunch of stoners too. Maybe you edit that out, but do you, getting into China as a pot smoker, I'm not suggesting anyone do this. That's actually a risk unto itself.
It is, but we didn't think about any of that.
Got it.
Yeah.
You were too stoned to think about it.
Didn't care. Yeah.
How many people in the crew that went to China with him?
There's a fairly big crew. Okay. I mean, we it was Greg Hunt, myself, Jason Ellis, Colin, a bunch of us went with him.
Wow.
We brought a doctor. I forget his name. His first name was Brian. He was a maniac, some dude that Danny knew.
Did the doctor help him when he fell?
No, he did. We went. He went straight to the hospital.
Okay.
And the doctor rifled through the hospital and got a bunch of drugs and stuff to numb his foot.
Wow.
And tape his foot back together. And it was broken, real broken. And kind of pieced him back together. And that's exactly why Danny brought him, in case something like that were to happen.
Damn.
Yeah, it was gnarly. And I remember, we went back to the hotel and we all didn't know what was going to happen. Danny comes back in with a cane, and
in China?
Broken foot.
In China. Yeah. And I remember the next morning, I'll never forget this. He called the hotel room and I answered the phone and he's like, fuck. He's like, this is kind of a lot of pressure. And I'm like, you think? I'm like, there's only a couple billion people watching you and you have a broken foot. It is kind of a lot of pressure. He's like, yeah, I'm going to fucking do this. And I'm like, yeah, it was gnarly. And,
nobody tried to cancel it? Any of the officials or anything?
Well, when they found out that he rolled in and skated, they tried to shut the whole thing down. They were pissed.
Oh, because you weren't supposed to. But if that had happened on game day, with everybody watching,
well, that
makes no sense. It's clear that, once again, big organizations, not as smart as the one skateboarder. Well, it is amazing. I'm only half kidding because, you talk about Danny not using measurements or he's doing measurements, but he doesn't have a team of land surveyors or wind velocity measurements and all this kind of stuff, and yet look at what he's done.
No,
what he's done. It occurs to me now that he's not just an amazing skateboarder. There's a in certain communities, they call it sort of an unconscious genius in there. That somebody can, because he actually does the thing and he's not just an engineer, he might actually be in a better position to do it, even though it doesn't have the sort of technical descriptions, right? Because he's actually the one who's putting his life on the line.
Luckily,
fearless, man.
Yeah, luckily he was feeling it out for himself. He wasn't feeling it out for some other poor person to hook themselves over that.
Exactly.
Gap. But yeah, it was insane.
No stunt, man.
No, it was insane. You know, so he did. I mean, he went and jumped it the next day
several times.
Yeah,
360.
Because he wanted to skate the ramp. We'd made the quarter pipe. That quarter pipe was 30 feet, and the landing was even steeper. He was getting more speed into that landing than he did on the other mega ramp. And, you know, he's going like 20, 25 feet in the air. He's like, I want to fucking break my high air record. Like, this is bullshit. And, you know, he has a broken foot, so he doesn't have the ability to really land. So
he's on his own serious pain medication. His foot's all wrapped up.
His foot was just wrapped up. You know, he wanted to feel, you know, and it was crazy because it was his back foot. So it's like, that's how you know, but his board, you know, he had like special titanium indies made, and like they were cranked down as much as possibly could be.
Okay.
You know, he had a special setup made, you know, to jump.
Yeah.
To jump the wall.
So why use different trucks?
Lighter.
Okay. Okay.
Titanium, because they're huge. They're Indy 215s. They're super wide, and the board was huge. It's 36 inches long, like 10 inches wide, and the truck stuck. It was an outrageous looking setup. You know, it was like, did not look like
so
a
the
skateboard.
kind of setup that gets you teased as a kid, like your board has ears.
Couldn't show up in Embarcadero with that setup. No. Had I showed up in Michigan with that setup, I definitely would have gotten robbed.
So his first run, the next day he lands it.
I think it was like a couple runs in, but yeah, he made it. And I remember once he made it, I was like, wow, like he did it. And then, you know, he back three'd it, and I'm like, why do you want to back three? He's like, I don't know, something to do in the air. Like, just wanted to.
Jesus, bro.
But this is, I mean, you know, listen, there are a lot of amazing skateboarders, and right now I think that, you know, all eyes are on Jimmy Wilkins, who's rides for real, who's just beyond, you know, it's just incredible. But I think that I actually logged on to watch Danny do that. It was 2005, right? I was at a molecular biology course at Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory, and I woke up in the middle of the night or whenever it was, because it was done in China, to watch him and on a little thing about the size of a phone, and saw it, and it was, you know, it was the first ever kind of thing like that.
Yeah.
Even though it's not like skateboarding the way I think about it, you know, jumping over monuments and stuff is very theatrical. On the other hand, just knowing a little bit of him and having known him a little bit earlier and now better, we're friendly now as adults. Like, I think just to think of anytime someone's doing something for the very first time of that magnitude, it's really special.
Oh, it was insane. I mean,
insane, dude.
Yeah. And at the time, of course, I had kind of a skateboard mentality about it. Like, this is kind of dumb, you know, like, well, just because he'd done essentially like a bigger gap, and, you know, he'd done stuff on the rail, he'd done all, you know, and I was like, oh, whatever, like, this will be cool. Like, you know, I was happy as his friend to go, and I was happy as a photographer to go there and capture it. Although I was asked, it was the first time photographing him that I ever shot anything digitally. And that was right when, you know, I mean, digital cameras had come out well before then, but I was forced to shoot it with a digital camera, and I was like fighting it tooth and nail. It got to the point where they're like, okay, well, DC was like, all right, well, you're just not going to go. And I'm like, okay, well, buy me a nice digital camera then, and I'll go. And because it was, you know, when he landed it, I didn't get to even see him afterwards. I was like put into a car because there was no like Wi-Fi and like sending it on your phone. I was taken in one of the more psychotic car rides I've ever been in my life to a press room to upload this, you know, I had to edit the photos super fast.
Wow.
I remember like there's all these people over my shoulder, and I'm like, fuck, like this sucks. That's, you know,
intense.
Knowing you, this is like your biggest nightmare.
Oh, it sucks.
Mike will always find a corner where he can just edit photos where no one sees them. You can't say send me that photo. He's like, I'll send you that photo, but only once it's ready.
Yeah,
it's that work ethic. And
so they're surrounding you, all these people.
Well, because they wanted to get it out there. And I remember the next day, it was one of, if not the most like looked at thing on the internet, like at period. And I was like, okay, like I get it now, you know, but I was like, I still could have shot it with film, but you know, I could have done the whole like process the film in the bathroom sink. I used to do it when I was a kid at the weddings, you know, like that kind of thing. But they were like, no, shoot it digital. It has to go out now. And it was like on, you know, it was in newspapers. It was everywhere in the world. Like the photo went absolutely everywhere.
And how hard was it to pick that photo and how fast?
It was easy because, you know, he made the jump, you know, 4 or 5 times. So I picked, you know, the right, you know, back 3, how it looked.
Yeah.
And like, you know, there was one time the sun actually came out, which was a rare occurrence. And, you know, it's usually like smoggy and kind of shit weather.
Yeah.
The sun did come out and it was like, you could see he actually wore a red shirt, which also kind of sucked because it was in front of this giant red monument. So the sun came out and you could see him. So it was pretty easy to pick out that the select was.
Damn.
And I just gave them that because, you know, you always, if you give them the one that you don't want them to run, they're going to run that one. So I just was like, here's your portraits. Here's your photos with the officials we shot. And here's your one action photo, the one, and that's it. So, yeah.
Wild. Mike, I have a question about cars and shooting from Ken. Because you mentioned Ken Block, who was at DC.
Yes.
But then I don't know if you watch this stuff, Toby, but if people haven't seen this, if you go on YouTube and you put in, you know, Ken Block, San Francisco driving, like all the rally car stuff and jumping cars through San Francisco and, you know, just crazy cars in city type stuff, which isn't skateboarding. So when did you learn to shoot cars jumping and all the Gymkhana videos? I think have hundreds of millions of views, right?
The San Francisco one does have over 100 million views.
Wow.
But it was this thing where, you know, Ken was always into cars. You know, he always had like nice cars, and you know, when he hired me to work as a kid for DC Shoes, you know, he always had like it's nice Benz or whatever. He's always into like cars, you know. But when he sold DC, he went to rally racing school and he started like, you know, driving, you know, learning how to really, really drive. You know, it turns out he had a lot of talent in that. And he's also very smart and he's good at marketing. And this is when like viral, quote unquote, viral videos are coming out and people, you know, like filming like a car, like sliding into a parking spot or something like that. And he, you know, him being the brilliant dude that he is, was like, well, what if I make like a 6 or 7 minute part, like a skateboard part, but with my car?
Wow.
And so
crazy idea at the time, right?
Crazy.
Insane.
Yeah.
So he did, you know, and it went off like it, you know, and I still was like, oh, whatever. Like, you know, I didn't really pay much attention. But then when Gymkhana 4 came around, it was 2011 and we were filming it on the back lot at Universal Studios. And he's like, Blabes, you should really come check this out. And I was like, okay. My mind was blown. Like one of the first things I shot was on top of one of the buildings right at where Back to the Future is.
Oh,
right
wow.
where they filmed Back to the Future. He like, and I, you know, got the set a little bit late and he comes like sliding around and just slides. I mean, within like inches of people and all this stuff, just like first try, like slides in, like, you know, if you were pulling into a gas station between where the pumps are, like the 2 rows of pumps, like slid like sideways up into the gas station, sideways the whole way through the gas station, like, and then just out and exited like perfectly. First try. I was like, whoa, dude, when did you learn how to do this? Like, he was the guy that laid out ads and designed shoes.
It's like a skateboard trick.
Yeah.
It's
no,
like literally
insane.
I'm going to power slide through this like corner on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
No, it was insane. Like my mind was blown. I was like, dude, that was super impressive. Like, you know what I mean? I was like, it was crazy. And I shot photos for the day and I went home and I edited them right away because I was excited to see them, you know, because sometimes when you shoot stuff, you're like in the moment and you're concentrating on what lens you're using and your settings. And when you look at them, you know, whether it's film or on your computer, you're just like, whoa, like that was gnarly. And I was very excited to go home. So I sent him everything. And he was like, you're coming back. And I was like, no, dude, I got to go on a skate trip tomorrow. He's like, you're not going on a skate trip tomorrow.
I love how these guys, it's like Danny and Ken, both of them. Like, Danny, you want to shoot a photo of somebody like doing a switch crooks on a 2-foot high block, or you want to see someone jump 70 feet in the air? And then you're like, I actually have work. And they're like, no, you're going to do this. And then it's Ken. It's like, no, you're not going skateboarding. You're going to shoot pictures of me sliding my car through parking lots.
Which I was like, well, cool. No better person to tell them, that I'm not going than you.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
like, because it was a DC trip. So I'm like, yeah, perfect. Like I'll see you tomorrow. And so I drove back up and ended up staying for 3 more nights because it was a 4-day shoot. And yeah, it was insane. Because for me, you know, making a ledge look cool, which again, like a knee-high ledge, like making that look dope versus like a car sliding around and doing something amazing and shooting it like skating, where there's a reference of where you took off and where you're landing and like framing it and telling a story all in one photograph, for me was so much fun because it's like we have Universal Studios to ourselves and one of the coolest like race cars and a team, and it's like you couldn't even dream of being able to do that as a kid. Yeah. So for me, you know, being able to photograph that is so much fun. So I've done every one since then.
Oh, wow. Yeah. You have some close calls? Because you get hit an ankle with a skateboard, but get hit by a car is different.
The China thing, again, the back in China, or those roads in those mountainside roads.
Oh, yeah. We were in 2019 in September. He did this thing called ClimbKona, which is like there's Tiananmen Mountain, which is in some province in the middle of, I don't know, in the middle of nowhere in China. I don't know where we were. It was a long flight. And it's a mountain with 99 turns that goes up to the top of this mountain, and then there's stairs at the top of this mountain, and there's 999 stairs. And we were on this mountain, and you know, he has different cars for all these different projects, and this one in particular was a 77 Ford F-150 with a Ford GT motor in it. Okay. And it was kind of like this sketchy like thing that didn't really, you know, it was like, doesn't really handle super well. Mm-hmm. And he's like flying into these turns, and there's like 4,000 foot drops on some of these turns because it's on a mountain.
Yeah.
And like when we were scouting one of the first days, and there's all these big boulders, and it's kind of like guardrails. Yeah. And we were scouting, we were walking up the mountain, and I just kind of like kicked one with my foot. I'm like, hey, dude, these move. Like, just so you know, like, these are not stopping you. And he's like, I know. He's like, I'm glad Lucy's not here. And that's his wife. Fuck. And like, it was sketchy. And I remember I don't like heights. And on this one turn in particular, turn 43, he comes into the turn and he does like a donut. 2 donuts. I don't know what they have names for these things. I still don't know these names. I know skate tricks.
360.
Yeah, 360.
There's pirouettes. There's all kinds of shit. I don't know what. Yeah,
if they're calling them pirouettes, better not to know the names.
Yeah. I mean, whatever. It's amazing. Whatever he was doing was incredible. But I had to. I picked where I wanted to be, and I stood there, and I waited till the car was coming because when I'm photographing these things, I really want to map them out and know as much as humanly possible because I'm not part of the whole planning process. I'm like literally showing up in China and being like, okay, what are we doing?
Damn.
And they had these bus drivers, these tourist bus drivers, and they were taking people up, and they were pissed because we were closing down the road for like ages, and it was jamming them up. And I remember they were trying to get as close to me as possible, because I'm standing there and just these mirrors coming by my head, flying up the mountain, and I don't like heights, and it's like, you know, a couple 1,000-foot drop, and I'm just standing. It sucked, you know, standing there for hours. You know, there's been a couple close calls, like we were in Dubai, and he was doing donuts around a Ford Raptor, like a giant pickup truck on 2 wheels. You know, have you ever seen him like drive sideways on 2 wheels? And he's coming down the main freeway, and there's a Raptor on 2 wheels. And he's doing donuts around the Raptor in this like little tiny crazy like 700 horsepower Ford Focus, like doing donuts around it. Fuck, and I'm like, dude. And I'm standing in the middle of the road, and he's like coming at me. You know, I have a long lens, but I'm like, hey, dude, am I good? And he's like, this thing stops real quick. And I'm like, okay. And it was 7 a.m. the first morning.
Jesus, dude.
And I'm like, your days and nights are flipped because there's a 12-hour time difference in Dubai.
You're
off. It was insane. Like, I didn't know where I was. Like, hell in espresso. And like, just, you know, so I'm like on this road, like coffeeed out of my gourd, like just trying to shoot him doing donuts. And the ass end of the car did come about like 4 or 5 feet away from me. And it just felt so, because you could feel like the wind going by you, and those trucks are like 6,000-7,000 pounds. Yeah. They're big trucks, you know. So it's sketchy. Like, it's definitely, but I feel safe if I do believe that Ken Ken and I are very good friends. So if he's like, you're good, I'm like, okay, I'm good.
So is this a whole world of people that do this and they get paid to do it and they're sponsored to do it? Or is this something people just do for fun?
This is something Ken Block does.
Okay.
So yeah, that's pretty much it. No, it's not something.
So not a lot of people do this.
Yeah, he's pretty much, and his daughter, who's 15 now, right, just got her first race car.
No way.
One of the projects we did in LA, Gymkhana 7, we filmed it in 2012, and it was a 60, I think it was 67, I don't know, late 60s Mustang, but NASCAR crate motor, like all-wheel drive, like completely changed the car. And we filmed a project in LA, Gymkhana 7. I mean, he did a donut around Randy's Donuts, like all this crazy shit.
That's cool.
And now he's sponsored by Audi, and they did this series where he was drag racing people, because the car's called the Unicorn.
Okay.
And they did this thing where he was drag racing, like actual drag racing cars, like all these crazy cars. And because he couldn't, he's like, oh, it's probably not appropriate that I'm driving a Ford, and now I'm sponsored by Audi.
Yeah.
His 15-year-old daughter, Leah, did a series racing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man.
And she's grown up in karts and like seeing her dad, racing for a living.
Yeah.
And now she races rally. His wife races rally. And he races.
His wife
rally.
does it too?
Yeah, they all three race rally together.
I always wonder if in that family you get your family driver's license when you're like 6 months old or something.
No, it's amazing.
That's crazy. Not many people do this. It's like just his family, and like he documents it. And
I mean, he's a successful rally car driver, but this, and again, like Ken's such an amazing marketer and has such a brilliant mind that he's like, oh, this will be a fun, like cool thing to do, and also like, we'll get people to pay for it. And like, it's just like, it's amazing, like marketing thing. So, he does these Gymkhana projects, but he's also a rally car driver as well. So,
fuck, man.
No, they're insane. I mean, for all the things that I've been lucky enough to do all over the world and see, it's fun to photograph things that stop people in their tracks. You know, you can photograph a celebrity or you can do this or do that. But when you see something like him jumping over a whole city block in Russian Hill in a car, people are like, whoa, dude, like, what is that? So to be able to photograph stuff like that is a lot of fun. Same thing with skateboarding.
Exact same thing.
Yeah, because skateboarding, it's like you're shooting something that, just like I or you probably tore out pages of magazines and you taped them to your walls when you were a kid. So getting able to create something like that people really want to stop and look at is dope. Like, it's cool.
And you did the family portraits book too, which is great too. Do you like taking just stills of people?
I do. I mean, I think that came at a time where I wanted to start meeting other people. And, I'd always been into portraiture. I grew up, being a fan of fashion photography, like guys like Richard Avedon, and really studying portraiture. And, again, I wish I'd shot more of it when I was a kid, but I did shoot quite a bit of it from when I moved to the city. And, I still do. I still love shooting portraits. So, I worked with St. Archer at the time, which is funny because I didn't drink.
Because you didn't drink?
I didn't drink. And, they were like, oh, well, we want you to be an ambassador. And I was like, I have no idea what that means. But like, and even like to the point where Adam, he was the head of marketing at the time. Again, like I feel like I have a pretty good work ethic. I was like, hey, dude, like, I have no idea what I do for you guys. And he was like, like, like you introduce us to people and like you do, you shoot photos for us. And like, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm not posting photos of beer cans on my like feed or like, and he's like, no, that's not what we want you to do. We just want you to, link us up with FTC or these shops and like, just be an ambassador for us. And like, we give you beer, like give it to Grant, give it, like, I'm like, okay, but I don't feel like I do anything for you guys. Like, he's like, well, what do you want to do? And I'm like, well, I love books, because I'd made the book and it was such a great experience because you're making something that's tangible. It's like everything on the web is like a fart in the wind. It's just like you scroll through Instagram and it just come and goes. To make a book, it's like something tangible that you don't want to throw away. So he's like, cool, we'll make a book. And so they helped me publish that book in 2019. Awesome, yeah, no, it was amazing. It was a fun project.
And did you have a bunch of those photos already or just started taking more?
I wish I had taken more. At the time, as and still is like, full throttle, like at DC, I was doing a lot of commercial work, at the time. So it was difficult for me to like do that as well.
Yeah.
And that was when the dim light bulb started to go on about drinking. I'm like, wait, I have all these things going on and all these opportunities and all this stuff, but it's so much harder for me to do.
Oh, and 2 kids.
And
yeah,
2 kids,
that too. And so it was hard. So I did shoot some stuff for the book specifically. And it was a great experience, and launched the book and went out there. It was awesome. So,
yeah. Do you want to do more books too?
I'd love to do more books. I'd love to reprint my first book.
Yeah.
Because it's no longer available, and I should hit up Powerhouse. So if they're listening, I'd like to republish it.
Oh, it's like there's only one pressing of The Art of Skateboarding?
Yeah.
Okay.
And now, I look online and I'm like, wow, it's like selling for hundreds of dollars for a copy, which is a trip, because it's me, and I don't like to think of myself in that way, but it's like, it's doing, people are still hit me up to this day. Like, how do I get a hold of that?
Yeah.
And so,
well, one of the things that I learned from being in the skateboard world a lot shorter period of time than you've been in it, but is that for people listening, like, if you're somebody who likes taking photos, take photos, because the photos that you take now have a tremendous value going forward.
100%. Man.
Yeah. And so much so that whenever I've, podcasted or gone on, I secretly take appropriate photos of, of Toby or of Lex Friedman, or like you get photos with people right? And that's just for my own keepsake, right?
Yes.
But it's like, you can't travel back.
You
So
can't,
what seems now like, there's so many photos out there, there's so much stuff out there, it just won't matter. But that's what everyone said in 1993, or people were thinking in 2005 or 2017. So the amazing things that are happening now are worth documenting.
Well, and they're like baseball cards. It's like who you shoot photos of also makes them more valuable. Of course, like this, like Andrew's making fun of me because I'm shooting photos of both of you guys when I sat down.
We should probably say when we sat down to record, Mike took out his the photographer. He started taking photos of Toby and me, and I said to Toby, I said, this is probably the first time that the guest on a podcast is taking photos of the other people as opposed to the other way around.
Are you taking pictures every day?
Yeah, pretty much.
And with your phone camera as well?
No.
Okay.
I try not to. Well, because it's
how much did that change the game with photographers and people claiming to be photographers on social media? And take away from like real photography?
I don't think it took away.
Okay.
I think it added to it.
Okay.
I like to think of it that way because it's like there was always someone that wanted to take your job or someone that wanted to be.
True.
There's always someone that wants to be a musician or there's always someone who wants to be a podcaster. But it's like you just need to worry about what you're doing.
True.
And you need to do a good job of that and not worry about everything else.
You're so Midwest.
No,
It's true. It's such a Midwest mentality because I do think that, growing up on the coast, it was always like, you hear about this, like, kids, the sponsor me thing. Like people we're so obsessed by it, or like how to move up or do this. But it is true in science, in photography, in music. Like if you're paying too much attention to what other people are doing, that's time and energy you're not spending on your own craft. And so by definition, you are falling behind.
Yeah. It's true, man.
Yeah, you need to pay attention to what you're doing.
And stay in your own lane, man. Do your thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, for me, it's just made photography more accessible to everyone, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah.
I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. And I love shooting film. I grew up like learning how to process and print film, and it's a beautiful medium, and it's not practical for what I do often for work, but I enjoy doing it. But it's just the fast pace of photography now and Instagram and everything, it just allows you to share what you do with more people. So I don't think it's a bad thing. And commercially speaking, the days of like, you're getting hired to do a print campaign and that's it, and you can look at it one way, like that's a very beautiful thing, but also now when you get hired to do a job, there's 100 different uses for a photograph.
Yeah,
so
true.
It's like there's more opportunity as well.
And social media is your portfolio.
Exactly.
Your pages, yeah.
Even though mine is mostly old skateboard photos, but still.
It's the same thing with tattoos, I think, too, like how they had TV shows with tattoos and now like they're really accepted. It's like more normalized to have tattoos.
Definitely. You've got a few extra.
I do.
but
social media magnifies that, the whole tattoo world. And
yeah.
Yeah, I think also it gives the opportunity to see that the person who doesn't have any conduit to a company like DC or a university or isn't in the New York City hardcore scene or for a long time can literally put something up there, and if somebody spots it and it's amazing, It can give them a start. Even if people always think of like going viral or it's a big break, but I actually think what it does is it creates one or two connections or relationships that then lead to one or two relationships of people who are like with you and Grant that could critique your art. It's not always this is amazing. It's the, hey, this is a little blurry. Get your eyes checked.
Yeah. You know? Get some glasses, shoot more photos. And if that door does open, just make sure to walk through it.
But now some kid from Steubenville, Ohio, that wants to be a photographer can find out about you, and then he can post his stuff on social media. Maybe you'll see it.
Yes.
Maybe you'll hit him up, give him advice.
Yeah.
That's what's cool about it.
It's dope. And when people do reach out to me over Instagram and ask me, I try and always reply to them as best I can, because Grant did take the time and literally wrote down like straighten your horizon line. And, you know, took the time and sent me back my film and put something in the mail, and like it was amazing. Lance Mountain did the same thing.
Really?
Yeah, I wrote him. I did a school project, and they were like, write to someone that you look up to and ask them like a question, basically. And so I wrote Lance, and again, I think I was in 8th grade, and I wrote him like, hey, you know, how do you shoot photos? Like, it's because he was always such a creative dude.
So creative, man.
Took photos, and I remember I got a postcard back from him.
It's amazing,
and he was like, photography's just like skating. You know the angles. You just got to do it. It's essentially like what he said. And I remember when I made the book in 2009, I wanted to include that postcard in the book. And I went to his house, and I'm like, dude, did you write this? And he was like, yeah, that's definitely my handwriting. Like, I wrote that. So I shot portraits of him in a skate photo and put it next to the postcard in the book.
It's fucking beautiful, man.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's so cool. I mean, I'm so thankful that I've been, you know, gone from being a kid in the Midwest and writing letters to people to now like
friends with your heroes.
It's insane.
It's insane.
Like, it's really, really cool.
Same with Cabin of Soy. I met them years ago on the Warped Tour, and then moving out here, then like skating with them, and they've been on my podcast. And Cavalier played on one of our songs on H2O record, and it's crazy because you look up to these guys like they're fucking 10 years older than you, but they're really not much older than you. And you meet them. You know, magazines are like up here, and then you meet them like. So cool, man.
Yeah.
I used to write Ian MacKay letters, postcards. He used to write me back. I have a couple from Ian MacKay in the 80s. And he still writes postcards to this day. Still does it.
Really?
Yep.
Wow.
He seems like the kind of guy that like might not even have a phone, like an iPhone, like a.
We can hang up and call Discord. He might answer on the weekday.
Amazing.
He's so off the grid, but he's really so accessible as well. He's always at Discord. It's crazy. You can pull up. He'll be there. Take a photo on the steps.
He's like
it's unreal, man.
I don't know MacKay, but it seems like Jim Thiebaud, similar.
Yes.
Like just, you know, up there doing deluxe, just so in all aspects of skateboarding, and just from a place of just wanting to give as much as humanly possible to this thing that he loves so much.
Yeah, Jim Thiebaud's gonna be like the nicest humans in skateboarding world.
Best dude.
If I could give out Nobel Peace Prize, saved so many lives, and I'm gonna make him blush if he's listening to this. But it's just, and he's so humble, he'd say no way. But it's the people who are that humble who don't realize that they're doing what they're doing, but they're just doing it in the same way that someone like Ken is just doing what it just spills out from them. You know, they're not thinking, oh, how do I be a nice guy, or how do I,
no,
it's just
certainly
it's
not.
Just who they are, and the expression comes out in this community and in this way.
Well, remember before I started working for Mad Circle, I was a kid, and I remember going to Deluxe, and I did a couple things for Deluxe when I was a kid, and I remember I went to like a payphone, and I called Deluxe, and I asked for Jim, and got on the phone with him, and I was just like, hey, like, because I was like, I knew this is what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
But I was like, well, do you think I could work for Deluxe? And he's like, no, I mean, we have Gabe, who still works for them to this day.
That's cool.
Incredible. Yeah, Gabe Morford, like incredible photographer. And I was like, no, I know. I just wondered if you needed any extra help. And, Jim was so gracious. He was like, no, I mean, we don't, but like, we could for sure like, have you do some things, but he's like, just keep shooting, keep doing what you're doing. And I was like, okay, like I just listened to, I'm like, again, like very valuable advice. I'm like, okay, like, and it was, I still remember that, phone call to this day.
Yeah, just like those legends giving you their time just to talk to them or write them and stuff. It's like,
it's amazing.
It goes such a long way. It changes your life.
Yeah. Which is why, again, like you asked, if people ask me questions, I try and always answer them. Or sometimes when I post something on Instagram, I try and put like the things that I would want to have read as a camera nerd as a kid, like camera data or like exposure information. And like, I try and put that stuff because it's not a secret, I just try and put it in there.
Do you still love photography to this day?
Love it. Love it more than
anything. And skating, obviously, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, skating, it's like I don't do it the same as I was, and I'm not as plugged into it as I was because it's all I did all day, every day.
Yeah.
But, I think it's like you or Andrew, like we feel the same way. Like you watch a GX video, you watch something, you're like, oh my God. And it gets you so pumped.
Totally.
It like makes you want to skate or it makes you want to go do something.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything else like that.
Yeah, and you pay attention to the new skaters and stuff. Obviously,
Yes.
You're probably taking pictures of them and stuff.
Yes. Yeah, I'm lucky enough to still have my toe dipped in it with DC, and also through my kid. Noah like has such a good eye and like has such good taste in skating because it's like it's an art form. It's like
totally,
music or
man.
anything else. It's like you could have really good taste or you could have absolutely terrible taste. Just like you could have terrible style or like be a bad musician.
Yeah.
It's like
you could be terrible at skating and still love doing it. It's crazy. When I was younger, like when you first start, just learning how to do your first ollie, just practicing all day, and you keep slamming and falling, but you just want to do it.
Yeah.
It's an amazing feeling when you first land something.
Yeah. But the interesting thing about skating is you could technically be good at it, but still look terrible.
Yeah. Totally.
And that's like the most interesting thing to me. And that's what I love. Like I love talking to Noah about this, because he's just like, yeah, that guy's disgusting, like.
But he kills it.
He's a good skateboarder.
Sloppy style or something.
Yeah, like amazing. He's very good, but he's just like, yeah, I can't watch that guy skate. And I relate to that a lot, because and again, there's nothing wrong. There's no wrong or right answer. It's all, it's a creative thing. And that's what's so amazing about it to begin with. It's such a creative thing. It's like writing, it's like music. It's an art.
Yeah.
And so it's, I love that about it. So, and I have my own particular taste in it. That's all.
And when you see something that really matches that, it's amazing. Well, one thing that's always, Mike and I work together on the Huberman Lab podcast,
yes.
and have from the beginning. But the other two guys in it are amazing guys. We have an amazing team, but aren't from the skateboarding thing. So every once in a while, I have to like keep myself from like just saying, Mike, like, do you see this Guy Mariano clip? Like, we're both huge Guy Mariano fans. I mean, if you want to see, again, it's highly individual, but Guy, just what he does, he makes everything look incredible. It's just and I couldn't point to any one specific thing about it or how he makes that happen, but I always have to just wait until Mike and I are like away from the groups, because otherwise I'll just all day I'll be like, this Jimmy Wilkins clip is insane, and then this Guy Mariano clip is insane, and so if you're there, we'll do it, right? Because you get it.
So you look at clips a lot, Andrew. You watch a lot of skate stuff.
Yeah, these days, I mean, I always run it by Mike to make sure that I'm calibrated and I'm not.
But again, it's a matter of taste.
Yeah, like the Olympics did nothing for me. I was happy that it was in there because it would expand skateboarding. But yeah, I think watching Jimmy Wilkins skate vert is one of the most exciting things I've ever seen in any sport. And I pay attention to a few other sports pretty closely, and it's just incredible. It's just what he's doing, how fast he goes, how big, but how he looks when he does it.
Yeah.
And then Guy, and of course Gons, and I have my favorites, and there are others. Clay Kreiner is amazing. I still love watching clips of Danny, and obviously Tony, right?
Still killing it.
Yeah,
That's
coming
amazing.
off the broken leg so fast,
I know, dude.
He's a mutant in the best sense of the word, and just there are people that I love watching do it. The GX 1000 guys, the new video. What's the new one called?
Something for Pablo. I mean, I'm embarrassed that I don't know right off the top of my head, but
it's insane,
amazing.
It's the most ridiculous thing.
It is. Okay, I'm gonna check that out.
Yeah. It's scary. It's it's scary to watch. Like, I'm afraid to watch the Dahmer thing on Netflix. You suggested it, and I watched the trailer. I'm like, no, thank you. Watching GX 1000 skate San Francisco makes my pulse rate go up to a point where I'm like, this is insane. Like but definitely check it out.
And they would take your comparison to Dahmer as a compliment.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Because it's gnarly.
Yeah. That big air thing was an old school session in Utah they had last year. It was incredible watching Cab and the Christian Sword and everybody skating together. It was so beautiful, man. I want to go to that.
Yeah.
And Ellis just was out there too.
Yeah.
He got a concussion, like he slammed the first day.
I worry about
doing
him.
Like a 540.
Jason.
Yeah.
I love you, Ellis, man. You're a madman. You go so hard. It's inspiring, but it's also scary. I'll set him up. You okay? I have a concussion.
Well, the thing is, Jason. Listen, Jason. Pick one. It's like skateboarding. You can hurt yourself. Okay, fine. stunts. He's also a stunt man, and he does the boxing thing. Although he's been doing stand-up comedy now.
Yeah,
that seems like less concussion problems there. But how about skateboarding and comedy, and then drop the other stuff just to spare your
I love that he goes so hard though, man. He's just himself. I love him so much. Yeah. And his comedy's great. I saw him do stand-up. It was awesome.
Yeah, he's amazing.
He can do anything. He just focuses on it. He goes, but he's all over the place.
Yeah.
Is there anybody you still haven't took photos of in skateboarding you'd love to besides No Blender?
I mean, there's a lot. It's funny because I wish that I had. Sometimes I'm like, man, I'd love to like fly to New York and shoot. There's this kid Tyshawn.
Okay.
I'm like, man, like he's so sick.
Okay.
I'm like, I'd love to just go to New York and like hang out with him and like shoot photos for like a day or two.
Can you just make it happen? Just hit him up?
Probably. I mean, I know Bill Strobeck who films him all the time. I'm sure I could hit up Bill and be like, hey, dude, can I come out for like a day or two and just like just for fun? So I probably will at least ask if I can do that. But yeah, I mean, there's tons of people I'd love to photograph.
What about some old school heads? You probably get all those already.
Neil would be one.
Neil's one, yeah.
But I've never shot a skate photo of a soy. Shot portraits. I mean, I shot like a doubles photo of him at Tony's ramp with Jason on Ellis's birthday.
Okay.
Is the closest I've come, but like he and I like together. I've never shot Jimmy Wilkins. Andrew and I are gonna go down this week and do that at Tony's ramp. So yeah, I mean, there's tons of people. Because I'm such a fan of skateboarding. And it's like fun for me to do. It's like what I did as a
What's
kid.
that Japanese kid that Asoy's always posting? He's incredible. He does Christ Airs.
I know who you're talking about.
Oh my God, he's so sick. I don't know his name though. He just won a contest or something.
Yeah.
The kids coming up are amazing.
It's insane. So fearless. That Tony Hawk ramp, man. I went there and skated it. I was so shook. I met Tony. First time meeting him, I didn't drop in. I was just carving to the top. I refused to drop in and slam. I could definitely do it, but it's been years since I dropped in something that vert.
Yeah.
He's just standing on top looking down. It's, man.
Yeah.
Could you drop in on that?
I probably could. I'm not going to these days.
I don't want to play myself in front of him, especially.
Absolutely not. And, I'm like, I'm like 48. I'm not trying to like drop it. The ramp's 14 and a half feet tall.
It's scary, dude.
It's gnarly. I'd rather watch Jimmy do it or Tony or whomever is skating and take photos of them and just enjoy it.
Yeah. What's the biggest ramp you dropped in on, Andrew, before?
I don't know, probably a smallish vert ramp.
Back in the day?
Linda Vista Boys Club ramp, how big was that? Like 11 and a half feet tall? Something?
Yeah, maybe 11.
Damn.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying, I'm not going to claim I'm going to do it now, but but pools, like I was skating the San Jose skate park for a while when skate parks kind of popped up, and definitely there was vert on some of those pools, and you drop in. And with pool coping, it sticks out pretty far.
Yes.
And so it feels over vert. There's that moment where you're kind of dropping through what feels like nothing. So there's a moment
free falling almost.
But I think the key is really to just make sure that you get close to the wall as early as possible, right? Like you don't want to put your head in the flat bottom and your feet against the wall. Yeah. Like you want to keep your whole body as close to the wall as possible.
Yeah.
And I think that's but I was never a big transition guy. I was not a very good skateboarder, frankly. My body matured late. So I was getting hurt a lot and I was skinny and I kept damaging myself and I'd had no pop. And then, I later my body filled out and I got stronger. But by then I'd moved on to doing things like Thai boxing and boxing and academics. Yeah. And so I was punching books and ollieing concepts.
Did you miss skateboarding? Did you miss it when you left it behind?
I missed it and I also stayed close to it. So for me, I'd go when I was in graduate school, I'd see punk rock shows. So those things were always blended for me.
Totally.
I was never really into the hip hop thing, although I like it. Those things were really blended for me. It was the whole energy of it and the scene. But I did, and actually when I was in graduate school, I had this picture on my computer next to where I worked all day and all night because I worked like crazy. And it was a picture of my friend that I grew up with, Paul Zwanich, who eventually became a pro skateboarder and then moved out of it. I think I was just doing like some like indie grab air over a hip or something. And I put it there because it inspired me. But I'd watch the videos when they came out online. Yeah. And then when all the Lakai stuff started coming out and the girl stuff, like all those videos, I would watch them on YouTube and it was just like, wow, like what people are doing is amazing. So I always loved it. It still gives me energy.
Totally.
Right? And to me, the skateboarding community, and this is actually how Mike and I eventually decided to start working together, is if you want to do something DIY and you want to put the right feel on it, meaning what's right for what you want the world to see, the skateboarders are going to do that. Whereas like a marketing agency or like a branding agency, they just don't get it.
Yeah.
Sorry, marketing agent. They might get it for like a Hollywood person or something, but that's eventually how Mike and I started working together on the podcast.
Yeah. So you guys came up with it to do it. It was your idea to do a podcast and you hit him up, or?
Yeah. So Lex Friedman told me I should do a podcast. I was like, okay. And then I contacted my friend Rob Moore, who's had basically been helping me go on podcasts at that time. And he does a podcast called The Fight with Teddy Atlas, which is all about MMA and boxing. And Teddy's like the Jim Thiebaud of martial arts, except he's got 30 more years on him. I mean, Teddy's been in it for a very long time. And so we're like, let's do a podcast. And so we decided to launch the HLP, the Huberman Lab podcast. And then for the top card, the photo and the branding, I was like, I don't want to go to a marketing agency. They're going to tell me, oh, you should do this, wear a lab coat or something that like no scientist, by the way, scientists don't wear lab coats. Okay. I'm not recommending they don't because there's some safety protocols and stuff, but like, it's sort of like skateboarders in the street rarely wear a helmet. Yeah. So if you see a movie where the street skateboarders are wearing a helmet, like, hey kids, wear your helmet, definitely. But you're looking at something that's not the way it's really typically done.
Unless you're Mike Blabac, who wears a helmet still. Shout out to Mike Blabac. I love that dude. Okay, go ahead.
So,
badass.
So I was like, at that point I was in touch with Mike because of the health stuff, and we become friends and friendly. And so I said, well, that guy's really good at taking photos. And he had done the branding and the photos of a kid named Stevie Williams. That's what I was most familiar with. The pictures of people's faces up close, which is like a podcast top card. Yeah. So I said, can we do that? And then we needed music and an intro and outro for YouTube. And so he's like, oh yeah, I got guys from DC that can do that. And so I have to say, I'm going to embarrass him. In the best sense of the word, everything that you see with the HLP, like the feel, the fact that I want it to be about the science and the information. I didn't want bells and whistles and lab coats and beakers and stuff. Actually, we have one beaker and one thing. We do have spinning. Yes. We have one beaker video
and the bumper.
Yeah. But I wanted it to have a feel that was me, but also was really about the information. So we put together the opening soundtrack song, the bumper, the visuals, and that's all Mike. Okay. And then we also decided we were going to take really excellent portraits, meaning Mike would take the portraits of all our guests.
Yeah,
because
nice.
Scientists are not as interesting to look at often as skateboarders and other people because they're not doing anything. They're just standing there. And yet, we've been talking a lot about skateboarding and cars and jumping and flips and stuff today. But Mike's portraiture is amazing. Yeah. And so it's like, do you want to join us? And so Mike he's not like our photographer. He handles all the aesthetic stuff. There's only four core guys of the podcast. And then we poached 2 guys from DC recently. Yes. So now we're skateboarders. There's a lot of skateboarding woven into the Huberman Lab podcast at a kind of a foundational level. Thanks to Mike.
Yeah, your portraits are amazing. The one of him is incredible too. Like showing like what he looks like right now with his tats. And also Brooklyn Corey. Brooklyn Corey.
Yeah. She's
awesome, man. Yeah. Her story. I had her on the podcast too. She's incredible.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's amazing.
She's a skateboarder who got bit by a dog in her face.
Oh, yeah?
And bit her face off.
You took a photo of her?
Yeah, some portraits of her.
Super posy, super incredible human, man.
Yeah.
But your portraits are amazing, yeah. So just like action shots, you love just doing the stills, which is nice.
It's fun. Yeah. I mean, it's fun because, over the years I look back and I'm like, man, like, I always wish I would have taken more back then, but I grew up, again, looking at like fashion portraiture and things like that. I pulled a lot of inspiration for that, even wove it into shooting skateboarding, like the action photos, but Grant obviously shot a ton of like great portraits and Spike. Yeah. And so I've always enjoyed doing that, and in skating, again, you're in this industry or in this like this thing that like where you have to make something for people in which they kind of hate everything. Like if skateboarders like it, then pretty much the rest of the world will be hyped on it. And that's why fashion steals from skateboarding. And that's why everyone looks to skateboarding to see what
it's incredible how that is now, man.
So, when Andrew, when we started having, I think I remember because you came down to my house and you're like, I think I want to start a podcast. And I'm like, why would you want to do that? And like, you kind of broke down this, the same way.
Only a couple years ago too.
2021 we launched.
Incredible, man.
So this was like late 2020, probably November 2020. And you kind of broke down, like the same way that I helped you and shared all this amazing information and all the people that you have access to through academia. It's such a good medium to get that out into the world.
100%.
Like, oh, okay. And so kind of just, like Andrew said, just plug like, hey, like I pulled a couple ads from things and like maybe like a logo like this, and we shot the portrait in front of my daughter's bedroom door, and we recorded the audio in my bathroom. And
wow, super like, DIY.
The bumpers were done that way. Yeah, I mean, I think I was thinking about this for a moment. It's like when he says, skateboarders hate everything. I think that the important thing is to do something that you really like and represents what you're doing really well. Like you do this with yours, like the port shot. Like if you're a New Yorker. I know you're from Boston originally, but you're a New Yorker. I'm gonna out you again.
East Coast.
But like sitting on the stoop is like a huge part of life there. And you and anyway, there are a lot of things about it. But I think the important thing is also to not include something that doesn't fit. So a lot of what we're doing in a kind of Apple Steve Jobs kind of ish way is to always figure out what not to include. Like Mike's stuff is so clean. Like make sure people see what they need to see, and then not clutter it.
Yeah,
give them the information, but then strip away as much as possible so that they can get what they need. And I think it's been a ton of fun. I mean, it's also allowed me to work with one of my now best friends and to also work out together when we travel. Like when we go to do podcasts elsewhere, it's like wake up in the morning, and one of our guys is like, he's a triathlete, so he's like out 5 a.m, running, cycling, swimming. We're like coffee, lift, coffee, this kind of thing. But getting to work with your friends and travel, to me, it feels like skateboarding, except I exited.
Yeah,
I didn't get the chance. I wasn't good enough. I didn't put the time in to be part of that world. So for me though, it feels exactly like skateboarding. Like get in the car and go, or bring all the gear and go, or record record at the kitchen table and then get it out to the world.
Totally,
I think that that's the feel. And then of course, then to do it with your homies and like trust that like these are the best people. I wouldn't want to work. I couldn't imagine working with anybody else. If it was someone who came along and was like, oh, big agency, or like, I was like, I would actually not do it. I always say, if it wasn't Mike, Rob, and Ian working with me, that's the kind of core 4. And I love Martin and Chris and Sarah and our other people too. But if those other 3 guys weren't there, I wouldn't do the podcast.
Yeah,
I just wouldn't. In the same way that like in a band, right?
Totally.
You might be able to turn over one member if somebody dies or something, but the chemistry is what's important.
100%, man.
It's chemistry. And even though I'm the only guy blabbing into the microphone forward, it's like I cannot do it without them.
Yeah.
Like it's not like just an overstatement. I can't. There's no way.
That must make you feel really nice.
It does.
Yeah, no, so appreciated.
And it's so, I mean, I appreciate it's fun being a part of it. And it's fun, like, again, because you're around for nearly 30 years making stuff again.
Yeah.
And so like, the bar isn't necessarily such that with podcasts, but to work with Andrew has the same aesthetic and the same taste being a skateboarder.
Yeah. And he must be learning much too. Learning a lot of things he talks about.
Oh, it's insane. Right? I mean, like, no disrespect to skateboarders, but a little bit of a different crowd.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like
we have our dysfunction too. Every crowd has our dysfunction.
No, but I mean, like it's my, Andrew will tell me like, oh, this guy does this, and I walk away from the interview and my mind's just blown. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love the way you break things down, Andrew, too, for people from our world that, not everybody's been to college, everybody knows about all this, a lot of science stuff. We had Milo from Descendants, and now we have Andrew Huberman later on in life. You know what I'm saying? Like somebody from that world. And you break it down so well that everybody can understand it. You speak so well and straightforward about it. It's not huge words. I just love your approach, man. Oh, and I've learned so much from meeting you and listening to your stuff and talking to you. And it's awesome, man. It's cool.
Thank you. Well, one of the
best. You turned out wonderful.
Thanks, man. Can my mom listen to this, please? Well, I mean, one of the best things about it, too, is it's brought me full circle back to skateboarding through Mike.
Yeah.
Like we're going to shoot photos of Jimmy Wilkins he's going to shoot the photos. Again, I'm going to just stand there.
I'm going to go to that and watch, man. That'd be sick. Okay.
And with Tony and back in touch with Jim Thibault and skateboarders reach out. And so, to me, people always go like, it's now I'm going to start to sound like a kind of one world, one love kind of thing. But the web of connections brings it right back to the things that you love the most. And it, Mike's photos, right? I loved Mike's photos for years. So when we were at that barbecue and he's like, hey, Mike Blabac is here. And I was like, Blabac Photo? I thought his name was Blabac Photo.
And then he's asking you for advice.
Yeah, and then now he's made the HLP. Everything you see about the HLP and hear, everything is because it's incredible. That's Blabac. Man. So
We're all connected, man. It's crazy.
It is crazy.
Punk and
you and now we, are in touch about all sorts of things.
Yeah, man. I love having you in my life and meeting you, and now you in my life, and heard great things about you and your story and your journey and everything you've done with photography and not being a filmer and and now podcasts and like turning your life around and being sober and because you just meet people and they you ask for advice, you listen. You're a really good listener too. Yes. You took advice from everybody, just give me tidbits here and there,
And I really like the both of you. I have to say, I'm gonna and both really good parents. Like I don't have my own kids, but it's like hopefully someday. But it's one of these things where it's like to do all of the stuff while also raising kids, and like that's
pretty gnarly.
That's a hero's feat.
Kids are the best.
Kids are the best. I can't imagine my life without being a parent. Like that's the best thing that happened to me.
Yeah,
becoming a dad.
Yeah, I mean, because like it was 24 when I had my son, and I was like, whoa. And still, even when my daughter Ty came along, I was like, oh boy, dude, this is gnarly. And then it just makes you a better person. You have to step up and like.
Yeah, and you can't be financially and mentally prepared to have a child. People are like, I have to plan for this. You can never plan to have a kid. If you want to do it with a girl you're in love with, just do it out of love. Just do it, and it happens. You deal with it. You can't be prepared. You can't plan the baby, man. You can't plan the finance. And I want to have this much money saved and this much. I think you just got to do it if you want to do it.
I certainly didn't.
What?
I certainly didn't plan it all out.
Yeah, but you did. You want to love. You want to have a child. You want to have a kid, right? That's why you did. That's what happened.
Well, I mean, yeah. When Noah's mom and I found out, we were having him, I was like, okay, it's like a switch. You know, like, man, like
so much stress, so much fear.
A lot of fear. A lot more.
Just not knowing.
Shooting a lot of pictures.
Hustling hard.
Hustling. And it's changed me, and it's a big part of what's made me, change myself or try and work on myself, even throughout their whole lives, to make myself a better person.
Do you think being sober makes you a better parent?
Absolutely. 1,000%. I mean, a full 180, like a completely different, because kids know, like they know what you're doing. Like no matter what, 100%. If you, like, oh, like whatever, he's 8 or he's 9, they're not paying, they're paying attention. They remember everything. They see everything. They know what you're doing. And, I kind of never really thought about that. And I never really...
The impact.
And the impact that had. And they both took notice, and they both have said stuff to me about it since.
Wow.
So it's amazing. It's very rewarding.
It is,
to know
man.
that, so.
They listen. Yeah, my son never... Yeah, Max never had meat. He's never drank or did anything yet. And that's not... Like, if that happened, I wouldn't care. He's 19 years old. Like, you want to eat meat, try it. You want to drink, try it.
Yeah.
But he just doesn't do it. And he has no... He doesn't want to do it because of me. You know what I mean? I never said, grow up and be like me. I never said that to him. I just try to lead by example, and he just knows that I'm a hyperactive psycho skateboarder still, and I'm 52, and that's because of the lifestyle that I live, I guess, and I'm high on life. I'm just leading by example.
Yeah.
Like...
So I feel like I'm doing that more now than I ever did throughout their whole lives.
Yeah.
Over the last 3 years.
And we're not perfect. You can't be a perfect human.
Not. No.
What's crazy is like having my wife of 26 years, and we were best friends, and we were boyfriend and girlfriend, all that, and then you get married, and then she has the baby, and you're in the hospital, and like those first 24 hours where all his maternal instincts kick in, she becomes a mom, and she's like all of a sudden breastfeeding, like, what the fuck? It's so surreal, that 24 hours. It's like you see your lady turn into this other part of her. It's beautiful. Then the next couple of days, like, here's your kid. Good luck. Take it out to the world. You get this human, man. It's unreal, man. It's really beautiful, man.
It is insane.
And to see her become a mother, and not just your lover and your best friend and your partner. Now she's a mom, and it's like, she's never been a mom before. I've never been a dad before, like. Yeah. And those first couple of months where it's like, is this how it's supposed to feel? What am I supposed to do? I'm just changing diapers. Like, it's all about her breastfeeding. Like, when do I get to feel the connection? It's weird for a dad at first. I don't know if you felt that the first couple of months. Like, what do I do? When does your kid see you, and not when does your kid need you? Because it's about the mom. That shit's it's a mind fuck at first. It was for me.
Yeah, it's a trip. I never even... Noah was the first baby I'd ever even held.
Wow.
Like, I was like, whoa, what is this thing? Like,
and it's yours forever, man. You know what I mean? Like, it's forever.
No, I don't.
I know, but you will. No. You'll be an amazing dad, Andrew.
I love kids. I love kids.
You're great with kids, yeah.
I love kids.
You'll be a great dad.
Kids are great.
It just changes everything. Like, you just see everything different in the world. Like, I could deal with, like, watching violence in movies and shit like that. And I got way softer and way emo after I had a kid, man. Just crying at everything and not want to see violence or watching the news. And then it's strange, man. Then seeing things, it's like,
yeah, it's true.
Changes your perspective on the world.
Absolutely.
It's fucking, and then not growing up with a dad and like all that kicks in. I'm going to see a therapist now. I'm going to announce it on here, whatever. I got inspired to go.
It's good. You like destigmatize it. Like,
and we talked about it. I talked to you, Rich, about like, I'm going to see a therapist and it's been great. And I'm breaking nobody in my family has ever done it.
No, it's important to do. I mean, I had to do it.
Okay.
Because I was pretty feral growing up. So there was a lot I had to untangle.
Yeah.
And I knew as I got older, as my son got older, I'm like, like I probably wasn't the best thing of just like doing what I did growing up. And I wanted to, right the ship as much as I could as a parent and not have the same cycle. And so that's why I started, going. So it's really important to do.
I was so scared, man, just going and talking to a stranger. But then after you talked, it's like, it's amazing.
Well, it's interesting because they like point out all this stuff. For me, at least, they pointed out all these things like, I used to run around, skull bandits, guns. And they're just like, whoa.
6 years old.
Yeah, like what? Like, how are you here?
Totally normal for you.
Totally normal. When in reality, like, that's not really normal. And then I turned around and I was like, oh, wait, like, maybe I, should pay more attention or should, because it's like, that's your only reality. That's all you know.
Yeah.
And so that's the dopest thing about it is like getting someone else's perspective on like parts of your life that you've never shared or even thought were necessary to share with anyone else. It's amazing. Also
becoming a parent, it's like the world doesn't revolve around you anymore, you and your lady.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean? And like sleep, just all that kind of things change and like privacy and all that. And like everything's just totally different. You know what I mean? That part of it's just like, it's not about me anymore. It's like this.
Yeah.
You're going to raise this motherfucker right. You know what I mean? Make sure he turns out great and with love and compassion and all that.
Yeah.
And it's just, it goes by fast too. And then I'm not trying to be morbid, but when you do have a kid, it feels like your life goes by way faster, especially when you're in your 50s and you see like the end game there, like how long we're really going to live. And then your son's this age and you want to be there forever and watch over him as long as you can. And is there somebody up there? Am I going to go there? Am I going to be watching from heaven? Where am I going? Am I going to be, I don't know. It's kind of morbid to think about sometimes. Like what happens?
That's also just realistic, right? I mean, I think the greatest concern of every species is to make more of itself and protect those, protect those offspring.
I have a question for you, Andy, too. I never get to ask you on the first episode. Like, I hate needles. I hate the doctor, but I can't stop getting tattooed. I enjoy the pain of it. Is there something in your brain that is allowing me to like, why am I scared of one thing, but then I'm obsessed with the other thing?
I'm guessing it's not about the needle. I'm guessing it's about the doctor. If I came over here with a syringe with just some saline, just some like water solution, would you let me give you an injection?
Probably because you're a doctor, Andrew Huberman.
But would you be afraid?
Of course I'd be afraid, but I trust you though.
It seems like there's trust for tattooers and
yeah.
What is it about doctors that freaks you out?
I don't know, but it's just I want to ask you something in my brain like how come I can be okay with one thing and then the other thing I'm like nah. Do you know what I mean? It's just like maybe because I want to do this to myself. You know what I mean?
Maybe you think of the injection as someone doing something to you that you don't want, like it's invasive. I mean, you could unpack the psychology of it. You could also we could just do some desensitization therapy. I've probably got some needles around someplace. We could. But Ben, I don't. I'm very clear. I'm not a drug user. But I'm sure I've got some needles for injecting. Saline or something like that.
And then another question for you. What about looking at your phone at night in the dark? That's bad for your brain?
Just dim it down. And if you wake up in the middle of the night, try and stay off the thing. But if your mind's really racing, I'll put on like a YouTube thing every once. Well, how about this? Last night I went to bed really early, like 9:30. Woke up at midnight 30 or so. And I was like, I don't want to be up all night. And I felt like, okay, you know what? I don't want to lie here stressing either. I didn't want to turn the light on, wake up my girlfriend. So I watched, 3 episodes of Cobra Kai and passed out.
Cobra Kai.
Yeah.
That's light. That's nice.
Yeah, like you don't have to think too much. If you pass out in one episode, start 3 episodes later, it's basically the same show.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not into it. And so that helps too. And so, sometimes just being able to turn off your brain is fine. Reading's good. But, I wouldn't obsess over it. I would just dim it way down.
Yeah.
And I think it's more important perhaps to make sure that you get sunlight in the morning when you can. Get outside and get some light. Take your coffee or your water. Do you drink caffeine? I keep asking you this.
I drink yerba mate like you drink. Okay.
Yeah. So take it outside in the morning and do that. But if you wake up in the middle of the night once and you truly cannot sleep, just don't stay in bed stressing out. Get up and go read. You'll be fine with one night lousy sleep. But dim the lights.
And then is there a part of your brain that like blocks out trauma because it wants to protect you? And then later on in life, if you do go to therapy and they help you unblock those blocks, is that something the brain does to protect you as a young person?
Repressed memories are not as common as television and movies would make you think. But what often happens is that something will happen to somebody. It's traumatic, and trauma is defined as something that changes the way that your nervous system works so that you don't respond the same way going forward. It's not just a really bad argument. It's like a really bad argument maybe where somebody screams at you in a way that makes you feel like uneasy for a few days or for a week or something. That could be, or then later you're still thinking about it. It's people tend to, when really bad things happen to us, people tend to keep it inside, and they have like a secret narrative about it. And they try and hide it. They try and cover it up with alcohol. They try and cover it up with sometimes too much, just not thinking about it, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't even have to be with drugs or alcohol. It's very clear that writing it out or talking about it to a trusted friend or a therapist or
journaling
can really help, because there's something about putting it into a narrative that normalizes not the experience, but the feelings about the experience.
Got you. Putting in a song, lyrics.
Yeah. I mean, you said you're just going to a therapist. Now I would say you've been going to therapy for a long time. In addition, even though I think it's great that you're doing that, I mean, you've been doing that like a catharsis. Like you get up on stage and jump around, move your body, yell, you scream, you sing, you move it out. Or like skateboarding. I mean, one of the things that was hard about leaving skateboarding, frankly, is I felt like I could work and work and work, but I used to think to myself, I never slam. Like I remember like going home like with a hip or like just being in so much pain, but it was like I took skateboarding, or making it, and with work I felt like I could work until I could collapse.
Yeah.
And this guy works like a maniac too.
Yeah, sounds like it.
In fact, I think these days the conversations have been more about like how to throttle back, get enough sleep, take good care, because work can also become a form of self-abuse. So you want to keep it in check. Well, just like touring, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can
exhausting.
Demolish yourself and relationships with touring, right?
Yes.
I think it's, it's not everything in moderation necessarily. It's just, take good care. We had a guest on the podcast, Paul Conti, who's a psychiatrist, extremely smart, very grounded, not just about drug treatments, but all treatments, talk therapy. And he said, the most important thing is first principles of self-care. Like we always think how we can give, but it's make sure you're not getting enough rest, nutrition, social connection, nutrition. Like I think I said nutrition twice, but it's just so important. And then you have so much more to give.
Yeah.
But people often get at the other background. They try and burn their life on the altar of something. And then 8 years later, you're wondering why that person is on pills or why that person is depressed, or maybe that person is you. You really have to play the long game, work hard, but also take really good care.
Yeah, super important. I like talking to Andrew the whole podcast about skateboarding. But then when you ask him questions, it's a different Andrew speaking. It's like serious, and you want to fucking. Do you know what I'm saying?
I'm gonna go put my professor costume on.
Yeah. Do you find yourself asking him questions, getting advice all the time about shit because he's there and he's his good friend? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, also like you were saying earlier, like we interviewed Matt Walker about sleep, and I was like terrified. I'm like, oh my god, I gotta go home and sleep. Like I gotta this is gnarly.
Or on a Lemke about addiction, and we were talking about so many of our friends that unfortunately are stuck in that loop, pills or whatever it is, and we're really blessed with the podcast that these amazing, like the people we bring through are amazing, and we like to think that the world wouldn't necessarily hear from them, unfortunately, and otherwise. So
it's nice. Give a voice, a platform.
But I also go to this guy for advice, and not just about photos and like the aesthetic on something. Like I got to say, for all the book knowledge, like I still have major areas of struggle. I come to you for that. I come to Rich Roll for that. Other people too. I definitely have my pain points, and all the knowledge in the world is not going to eliminate one's own blind spots. So that's why you need friends.
It's a great point, man.
Absolutely.
We always something we can help each other with or talk about experiences and stuff. You know what I mean? Like, it's beautiful, man.
Yeah.
That's why I love these conversations, just face to face talking and Did you ever do Zoom podcasts before?
We've done one with a guy who wouldn't leave his house because of the pandemic.
Respect.
He had I think a family member that made it such that he didn't want to go out. But we really like in person.
Me too, man.
And
it's awesome, dude.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Well, I appreciate you being here, sharing your journey, and
no, thank you for having me.
I'm stoked to see what you're up to next. You know, maybe another book, maybe who knows.
Yep. Just
what about directing or a documentary or something like that for you or anything?
No.
Okay.
No.
No film, just photos.
No, I do some commercial work for people, and if a client is like, "Do you do motion?" I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely." I hire someone like Martin, for example.
Yeah.
To just direct them through and like, "Hey, look at this photo, shoot it like this, do that." But I think working on the podcast with Andrew is an amazing opportunity, and it's so much fun to be a part of it.
Yeah.
And work with your friends. So more of that. I'd love to do another book one of these days. Who knows? But I like to just keep working hard and plowing through life and looking forward and seeing where it takes me. So
I love that, man.
Yeah.
You have any questions, Max, for these guys?
Nah. Perfect.
Did we cover everything with him, Andrew?
I think we have. And just, thanks to you both. I mean, Toby, you've made a huge impact on my life in the short time we've known one another.
Same, bro. Same, man.
And Mike, your impact on my life has been tremendous and positive in every way.
Yeah.
I love your journey from a small town in Ohio to like just basically doing what you love, taking photos, and where that took you, you know?
Yeah, it's insane. I mean, it's a trip. Like, it honestly is. I can't imagine.
Just showing up to San Francisco, hanging out, skating, and just meeting people.
Yep. It's crazy.
Yeah. And just somebody responded to you in a letter or a postcard. And
yeah. I mean, I feel very like just to purely be doing what I love doing and trying to do the best job I can at doing that and just moving forward. And that's how Andrew and I met. And that's how we started the podcast. It's the same train of thought for everything. It's been amazing.
Awesome. And Andrew, I know you hate talking about brands, but thank you for the Athletic Greens. They changed my life.
Aren't they delicious?
And for the plunge, man. Thank you so much, man. Making it happen. Life changing.
Yeah, cold water and Athletic Greens.
It's perfect.
They're amazing, and if you don't have a plunge, you can get in a cold shower. It's a beautiful thing.
We're about to do it right now. I'm excited.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Thank you.
Good? Peace. Bye. I always ask my guests if they have any regrets. I personally don't have any regrets. Even when it comes to my tattoos, I have the silliest tattoos. Even my ET on my leg, it's still a childhood memory for me, and I love it. I've had tattoos on top of tattoos strictly because I wanted more tattoos. I started getting tattoos when I was 18. I'm 52 now, and I can't stop. I've had laser treatment before on something on my arm. It's 4 tattoos on top of each other. And that experience at that place was pretty fast. It was pretty cold. It was in and out, swiped the credit card. Don't really tell me much. Didn't give me much details of anything was going to happen. So I never went back. So as of most recently, I'm so lucky enough to have had 2 sessions at Removery Tattoo Removal. My tattoo on my arm that looks like a big black blob is now super light. I've had 2 sessions. I have a long road ahead of me. None of this stuff happens overnight. You cannot take a tattoo up in one sitting. You have to be patient. And it's painful. They ice you up. It's super fast. To me, it felt like a bunch of rubber bands. But what's more painful than that is looking at something on your body that you think you're stuck with for the rest of your life. That sucks. But now for me, I'm really happy I started this journey. I'm slowly going to get this tattoo removed. I never thought in a million years I have any kind of real estate on my arm. I don't even know what I want, but it's exciting. I'm so honored to announce that One Life, One Chance podcast is now with Removery. I have a code. Use TobyH20 and get $100 off your first session. Call 866-934-4570 or go to Removery.com. One of the most experienced tattoo removal companies in the world. Over 600,000 removal treatments done. 100 locations. U.S., Canada, and Australia. State-of-the-art peak-away laser technology. Cryotechnology to reduce any discomfort. This is so exciting for me because all I do in these podcasts is talk about tattoos. From day one, if you've been listening to this podcast, talk about tattoos, talk about getting removed, talk about getting covered up. So this is such a perfect fit for me. Once again, go to Removery.com or call 866-934-4570. Use my code TobyH20 and get $100 off. These guys are located everywhere. Try it out. Yo, people always ask me what kind of frames I'm rocking. I've been rocking Caddis for a couple years. They make amazing progressive readers, which I wear. Also, they make sunglass readers anti-glare, anti-smudge coating, anti-scratch, and anti-aging. That's why I look mad young when I wear them. I'm just kidding. But they make amazing frames. Cat is so stoked to have you guys part of the podcast. You can go to caddislife.com/Toby10 and get $10 off your first purchase. Stoked. Thank you, Caddis. Welcome to the fam. Yo, Liquid Death. Thank you so much for hydrating all my guests, taking care of me and my family and my friends. Love your water. Love your brand. Love what you stand for. Love what you give back to the community. If you want to learn more about Liquid Death and how it started, listen to episode 115 with the co-founder, owner, and creator of Liquid Death, Mike Cesario. Just a punk rock skateboarding kid from Delaware with a dream. It's an incredible story, incredible journey. They have now blessed me with my own code. So if you go liquiddeath.com/Toby, you get free shipping on any items you order from liquiddeath.com. Thank you so much, Liquid Death. Death to plastic, murder your thirst. Stay hydrated. You know H2O saves lives.